Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Here.
Fish?
Here.
Saltzman?
Here.
Wheeler? Fritz?
Here. I have the honour of presiding today since the Mayor's on vacation. And I want to announce up front that we're having to do a little bit of reshuffling of the agenda timing. Commissioner Fish has an excused absence at 10:30. So we're going to hold the 9:45 time certain a little longer so that we can do two issues that Commissioner Fish has special expertise in as our currently only lawyer present in the group of us. Just want to remind everybody to be respectful of everybody else. No audible discussions or sounds during the testimony unless we suspend the rules. Twinkle fingers or thumbs up or thumbs down, in fact, helps us know much better who's supporting and who's not. And if you're not able to do that, you will be asked to be quiet and then you'll be asked to leave. With that, please call the first consent. Oh, is there anything else from any of my colleagues? Please call the first consent item. I mean, the first communications item.
Item 1149, request of Roger Widener to address council regarding treatment by the police for trying to testify in court about public corruption.
Mr. Widener? Right, if he comes in later, we can pick that up. Next, 1150, please.
Request of Diane Sussman to address council regarding ways the city can help residents cope with heat waves and snowstorms. Yeah, any seat you'd like.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All we need is your name for the record. We don't need your address. The time counts down on that little thing. It'll be a little beep at 30 seconds and then lots of beeps at 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
So my name is Diane Sussman. And first, I want to thank you for giving me 3 minutes of blame on the one issue that seems to have surpassed traffic in the last year, and that's the weather. And I just want to know that I wanted you to know that I've never addressed the city council before. I'm a little nervous, but it's okay, because I'm picturing all of you naked.
On roller skates?
As we all know, this past year was alternately the coldest, hottest, wettest, and smoggiest on record. And that's not the city council's fault. But I do feel that this city, and I include all our wonderful residents in this, needs to do more than bear witness to its escalating snow gauges and thermometers and just keep saying that this never happens here. Clearly, the time to stop saying this never happens here is when something's happening here. And because it's unlikely that these are one-time, nonstop freak events, I'd like to offer a few ideas that I think would help show that the city is not once again going to let rarity supersede reality. And I'll start with winter. I sympathize with the city's rationale that it can't afford to invest in a fleet of snowplows, and I sympathize with not wanting to salt the roads because we are a tree-loving people. But I do not sympathize with having allowed the streets to remain iced over for 10 days while the city argued over salt versus snowplows versus studded tires. I can't tell you the number of people I saw falling on their tuchuses outside my window as they tried to get to the museum or work. I'm surprised lawsuits didn't follow. So I say to the city council, get some shovels, dudes. You guys opened some emergency shelters for homeless people, and I think that's absolutely terrific. But you could have bought some shovels and gone to the homeless shelters and asked if anybody wanted to make $8 to $10 an hour and go out and shovel the sidewalks. You could pair that shovel brigade with a list of people who live in the outer neighborhoods who their shoveling days are behind them or they're infirm, and you could send those people to their houses and help them shovel their sidewalks so they can get out of their houses. I have a feeling that if you did offer this, that there probably would be churches and soup kitchens that would offer a hot meal for these people at the end of the day, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the elderly residents and other people who need shoveling would give people hot chocolate and tips, and it would help with goodwill. Now I'd like to talk about summer, which really was hell. According to news reports, 40% of Portland residents don't have air conditioning. And when it comes to the grid, air conditioning pits the haves against the have-nots. So to me, the biggest offender were retailers who keep their doors open while they're running their air conditioning. I'd like to see the city pass an ordinance so that people can report if stores are keeping their air conditioning on so that they can close their doors. I only saw 2 stores that did that. If it's 90 degrees or above, they should be required to keep their doors closed. Also, on Spare the Air Days, had two more things.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
If you'd like to send us the rest of your testimony, we'll be sure to look for it. Thank you for your comments. Next one, please.
Item 1151, request of Michaela Smith to address council regarding the need for restrooms in Southeast Portland for our unhoused residents.
Thank you for being here. All we need is your name, and you get 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, City Council. My name is Michaela Smith, and I work for Operation Night Watch, a local nonprofit that serves people experiencing homelessness. I have a master's in social work and have been working and providing direct service to unhoused folks in Lents and outer Southeast Portland every week for 5 years. My work has given me a deep understanding of issues that both our housed and unhoused residents face in Southeast Portland. The issue that I would like to discuss today causes a great deal of tension, and that issue is hygiene, specifically regarding human waste. Based on my experience, there are little to no public bathrooms in Southeast Portland. None come to my mind, and I could not find any with a brief Google search. Unlike in downtown, where restrooms can be found at the waterfront or along the park blocks, no such bathrooms exist in Southeast, to my knowledge. It wasn't long ago that most of Portland's unhoused population lived in downtown Portland, but as the population has shifted into Southeast Portland, the bathrooms did not follow them. With no public bathrooms, this means that unhoused folks in Southeast Portland have very limited options. They may be able to find a business where they can occasionally use the restroom, but many businesses reserve their bathrooms for customers only, and almost all businesses close at night. Without public restrooms readily available, people must then travel with a 30 to 45-minute bus ride if they have fare, or a mile walk to find a restroom, which simply isn't practical. For those with disabilities, it may be impossible. When it comes down to it, these barriers often leave people with no other option than to relieve themselves outside where they live. This is not only unhealthy and demeaning for those who live outside, but creates unhealthy and unpleasant green spaces for their housed neighbors, which serves to increase tension among the housed and unhoused. Women I work with face particular challenges when dealing with menstruation and urination without restrooms. Women often tell me of the frequent UTIs they get due to lack of access to hygiene facilities. In addition to these logistical challenges, there is also the matter of dignity to be considered. My clients do not take pride in using the restroom in their public spaces. However, the infrastructure leaves them with no other options. Despite how it may sound, I am not here to blame the city or to criticize the city's work that it does to serve all its citizens. Portland is considered a leader in the services we provide and in prioritizing homelessness as an issue we care about, and I'm proud of that fact. I believe in our city's dedication to serve its people and the city's capability to creatively solve problems. If we were to provide increased hygiene facilities in Southeast Portland, public health would undoubtedly increase, people's health would improve, and the human waste impact on our public spaces would decrease, creating happier, healthier communities for all of its residents. As people's dignity and access to hygiene would increase, so too would their ability to be productive community members. And lastly, providing public restrooms would continue to demonstrate Portland's effective leadership in addressing its homelessness crisis. Our homelessness crisis may not disappear overnight, but I have confidence that with the city's leadership and creativity, the hygiene challenges of many unhoused citizens in Southeast Portland can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I will just say that I totally agree with you, and in every park improvement that we've been doing, we've been adding the Portland Loos. So now we have it at Colonel Sumner's, in Ventura Park, at Lents Park, which are all in Southeast, and absolutely I agree, we need a lot more.
Wonderful, let's keep it up.
Thank you.
Madam President, can I?
Commissioner Daly?
Oh. So I just wanted to let you know that I think in the fall bump, the mayor's looking for funding for some mobile units for Southeast Portland, but I mean, I also agree it's a serious problem, and what we've experienced when we bring up this conversation is a lot of pushback from the neighborhoods who feel that we're going to be encouraging or entrenching homelessness, but I think it's pretty clear that it's there and everyone needs facilities, so thank you.
1152, please.
Request of Mike O'Callahan to address council regarding shelterless progress by the city.
Good morning, Mr. O'Halloran. I know you know the rules. Welcome.
Michael O'Callahan, back at you again. You know, it poured. My neighbors got soaked, yelling and screaming at each other in the middle of the night. I don't know if he's got TB or if he's got pneumonia. 13-year plan to end homelessness. Where's it at? No plan at all, huh? Well, you know, from our earlier testimony when she was talking about, you know, everybody moving to Southeast, the homeless, well, it looks like you've been successful in sweeping the homeless out of the west part of town, huh? Yeah, they're on the other side of town now. You know the solution, okay, and I realize that none of you are responsible for this. Then again, all of you are responsible for this. So I've been talking to you guys for, I don't know, 8, 10 years, something like that, like talking to a blank wall. You know, my daughter just gave birth, you know, broke water on Wednesday, you know, gave birth on Friday. Okay, now half of the people in this room know what that means. I don't really. Go without shelter. Go outside for 3 days, okay? Live it, okay? And you'll come up with a solution. The problem, the originating problem, is foreclosures. You guys aren't doing anything about that. In my surveys, I found that in the past 2 years, we've had 6 times the increase of females on the street. Never had that before. Average of 6 years on the street. People are still waiting for my decision from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, as a teaching, okay, I do studies. One of my studies was to find a benevolent ruler. I knew there had to be one. And I found him in India. His name is Ashoka. Okay, Ashoka handed down edicts to all his inferiors. His #1 edict: you will treat all of my subjects as if they were my personal children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 11:53, please.
Request of Frederick Allen Maxwell to address council regarding thanks for all the fish.
Mr. Maxwell? Okay, thank you very much. So that concludes the citizen communications. We're going to do several things now to change the order of the agenda. First of all, I move that we have the council meeting on Wednesday, November 8th in East Portland at 6 p.m. at the David Douglas High School. Second. The reason for this is we're going to do a presentation, Prosper Portland's going to do a presentation on improvements in Lents, and then we're going to be asked to approve 3 master plans for parks in East Portland. So that's why I've worked with your schedulers, and I believe everybody's available on that evening. So by code, we have to actually pass a motion to say that.
Yep.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye. The very first thing I did when I got on council in 2009 was to make the rule allowing these things to happen, so I hope we get more of them. Now, secondly, we are going to hold up, let's do the consent agenda. I understand that several items have been pulled. 11:55, 11:58, 11:59, and 11:60.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
So does anybody want to pull 11:56, 11:57, or 11:61? Hearing none, please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye. Now, we do have a time certain, which normally would be starting in a couple of minutes. We're losing Commissioner Fish at 10:30 with a pre-scheduled absence. So I would like to, we'll start with 1162, which is about the disclosure against the Multnomah County District Attorney's decision. And then we'll go back to the items, the first of the items pulled on this consent agenda, 11:55, regarding the Deputy Police Chief. We'll then move to the time certain and do the rest of the consent after the time
Madam
certain.
Chair,
Yes.
can I also suggest we do the 3 second readings? Since that's just a boom, boom, boom.
Oh, certainly, yes.
And if it's at all possible, because 11:59 is an emergency, that's a ministerial act to distribute the 100,000 to the Rose Festival.
Oh, right.
I would hate for my absence to prevent them from getting a distribution we promised them.
I missed that one, Commissioner Fish. Thank you. What number is that one?
11:59, which I understand has been pulled.
Oh, okay. Yep. Right. So we'll try to all keep things busy in order, rather. And please read the item for 1162.
Authorize the city attorney to institute proceedings challenging the Multnomah County District Attorney's ordering the release of public records, identifying union membership status to Ben Straka of the Freedom Foundation.
Welcome, Heidi Brown from City Attorney.
Good morning, Commissioner Fritz, Council. Heidi Brown, as you said, from the City Attorney's Office. So this resolution is before you to seek Council approval to file an action regarding the District Attorney's ordering of the release of membership status. The request came in as a public records request for identification of the names of folks who were union members. The response by the city was that we would release the information of classifications, that information is on our website that are covered by the union, and that they could also then request the names of any employees within those classifications. What we said was we would not, though, identify who was a fair share member and therefore not an actual union member and those who were actual union members. And so that is the only information that we are seeking to withhold. The Freedom Foundation then filed a request for the district attorney to order us to release the information originally requested. The district attorney granted that order, and then our next recourse, if we want to continue, is to file in circuit court. The concern is twofold. One is regarding personal privacy as an exemption under the public records law. In regards to that, the decision for somebody to either be fair share or in a union is a private decision that employees can make. And secondly, there is a concern that we will be chilling employees' decisions regarding engaging in protected activity, in other words, in being a union member, by releasing that information, and that thereby subject the city to an unfair labor practice. The union has indicated to us that they would file an unfair labor practice complaint against the city if we were to release that information. So that is why we are seeking guidance from the court as far as what's the correct action between the unfair labor practice laws and the public records laws.
Penny, let me just ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Because people may be unfamiliar with the system of public records. So the city gets a request for some information, and the city looks at the request, the applicable law, and they then respond. In this instance, the city thought there were some personal privacy issues, labor law issues, and other issues which were sufficiently important that they didn't feel, that you didn't feel the city can release the information. Under the system that is in place for deciding these questions, because there's a legal system for finally getting a ruling, some of these decisions by the city go to the district attorney. Some actually go directly to court, depending on the grounds cited by the city. In this instance, it first went to the district attorney, and the district attorney, by law, has the first say. And so he looks at it, and he makes a judgment about whether the grounds asserted by the city are valid and what he thinks of them. He did so and has issued a written opinion. And what you're asking us today is simply to bump this up to a court, a neutral court, and have the court essentially have the final say on these legal questions. And you've also made it very clear the city is sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. If they were to disclose this information, they may be violating the privacy rights of employees and may be subject to a contract violation. And so what I understand you're asking us to do out of abundance of caution is let the court have that final say. And that, in effect, becomes precedent that will govern future requests. The system is actually set up for the court to have that say. I mean, we have neutral judges who issue rulings. So you're simply asking us to take a decision by the district attorney, go to a court, and have the court issue a ruling. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that way we feel comfortable that if the circuit court tells us to release it, that the public records laws overrule, then I think we can comply with that without subjecting ourselves to an unfair labor practice, or vice versa. They may say the unfair labor practice
And
laws.
there's a sort of suggestion that I've sort of picked up in the ether that somehow asking a court to render a decision on this is an exceptional or unusual practice. In fact, my understanding is that courts routinely are asked to make the final decision on this. Is that correct?
It definitely happens at times. Sometimes if a public official asserts an exemption, that automatically can only be appealed to a circuit court. So it bypasses, as you said earlier, it bypasses the district attorney. The only way, if the city were to assert or one of the commissioners were to assert a privacy exemption or some other exemption on the public records law, the only way that a requester would have recourse is to go to circuit court. So
just to be clear, you're asking us to authorize an appeal to a neutral judge who would have the final say on balancing a number of issues where you've concluded the city would have some risk in complying with this request. How long will it take for a judge to issue a ruling in this case?
I'm not sure exactly how long it'll take, but they do expedite the public records appeals. It is a declaratory request. We're just asking for declaratory relief, and it's a more expedited process, so I'm hoping it can come out within the next 3 to 6 months. I don't know for sure, though, whether it be less or more.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Fish, illustrating why I was glad that you were here for this particular item. Any other comments from council? Who pulled this item?
Yes, we have 3 people signed up.
Sorry, this was on the regular, right. Those who signed up, please.
Yes, Star Stoffer, Ted Bryan, and Emil Zell.
Please come on up.
Sorry.
Good morning, Star Stoffer. I am against the release of these records. This company that is demanding the release of these records is known to invest monies in anti-LGBT policies along with anti-union policies. This seems like a very dangerous downward slope fishing expedition to target and single out employees that are either pro-union or of the LGBT or other vulnerable communities. This is highly inappropriate. It's illegal. It's a massive violation of privacy, and if it's okayed, it will lead to further violations of privacy, not just for these city employees, but even further for even you council members and the rest of the community. This needs to be shot down. This is a severe overreach and abuse of power and intimidation tactics, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. So you support the council's action today?
I support sending it to a neutral judge who will hopefully uphold privacy laws and defend the community.
Great. Thank you. Morning.
Thank you, Star. My name is Ted Bryan. I'm a representative of Laborers Local 483, and I also support the council's decision to send this to a neutral judge. I just want to make the point that there is no legitimate public interest in releasing this information to the Freedom Foundation. The Freedom Foundation is an organization that is explicitly dedicated to defunding public sector workers' unions. And as Star mentioned, they are also funded by organizations that are opposed to LGBTQ+ rights and reproductive justice. And we feel that releasing this information does not serve the public's interest. It serves the interests of this organization solely. And so we would support this being passed on to a judge to make this decision. I don't think the city council should be involved in any way aiding the goals of this organization, which the values of this organization are not in line with the values of the citizens of the city of Portland. They are not in line with the values that I see coming from the city council. And so, that's the main point that we would like to make. We also are concerned that this would subject our members to harassment. Because of their union membership, because of their lifestyle. We do not want Freedom Foundation out there knowing where people live, knocking on people's doors. So thank you very much.
My name is Emil Zell. I'm an employee of the city of Portland, have been for almost 14 years. And they're speaking about my information, that it would be given to this organization to allow them to single me out and attack me on my lifestyle. I don't agree with that. So I would support your guys' decision to send this up to a court, let a judge decide on it. This organization, they're not doing any of this for my interest. It's all an agenda that they have, that if you do a little research, you'll find out who supports this group. And from me and my coworkers, I would ask that you would not do that information.
Thank you. Thank you all for your support. Has anybody else signed up, Carla?
That's all who signed up.
All right. Any discussion from council? This is a resolution. Please call the roll.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fish.
I support this, and frankly, I would support this regardless who the requester is. I think the privacy issues here stand on their own regardless of whether this is a request made by the ACLU or the Freedom Foundation. And I think ultimately we have to allow a judge, a neutral judge, to make this decision. And frankly, why shouldn't we go through a system of due process and let a neutral judge have the final say? So I appreciate the presentation, and I vote aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you to those who should testify, and thank you, Attorney Brown. Aye. Now going to take up Commissioner Fish's suggestion to do all the second readings, second vote. This is where we've already had a public hearing and we just need to vote. First of that is 1165, please.
Direct the Portland Housing Bureau to adopt an affordable housing green building policy for new construction and rehabilitation.
Call the roll, please.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, I want to congratulate the Housing Bureau. I think they've come up with a good set of guidelines to ensure that much of the affordable housing that gets built in this city or renovated is done in a manner that is lives lightly on the land. So I appreciate that. Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you very much, everybody. Aye. 1167, please.
Authorize the Water Bureau to acquire certain permanent property rights necessary for construction of the Penridge Mains Replacement Project.
Please call the roll.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye. And then the last of the second reading is 1168.
Authorize the Bureau of Transportation to acquire certain permanent and temporary rights necessary for construction of the North Columbia Boulevard, North Interstate Place to Northeast 13th Avenue project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Please call the roll.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Madam President, I know we're going to go to the time certain. I just
Actually,
want.
no, we're not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm continuing to follow your helpful
Oh,
suggestions.
so
And
say that,
I do apologise to those who showed up. Obviously, I think everybody wants to help Commissioner Fish with his schedule.
Jeff-
So,
Jeff
11.
Curtis won't be here until, he'll be here after the time certain. So if we could hold that to just after the time certain, 11:59. And then my only other request is, can we read 1164 so I can make a disclosure? Because I will not be here for the vote. I am required to make a disclosure.
All right. Please. Well, could you just state what you're on the record? What now? I don't think I want to call the.
Yeah. So when you call 1164, I would be required to make the following disclosure. This August, my daughter, on her own, secured a job with College Possible. She is primarily funded by the Bloomberg Foundation and is doing work nationally. Her clients are national clients. I checked with the city attorney's office, though, and because the special appropriations includes a $50,000 grant that is being recommended to us for College Possible, I'm going to disclose a potential conflict, or at least the appearance of a conflict, and therefore, on this item, I would not be, I would recuse myself and would not be participating.
Okay, thank you. We had been planning to hear 11:55 before we got to the time certain. Would that work for you? Because potentially,
Yeah.
so let's do 11:55, please.
Create a new non-represented classification of Deputy Chief of Police, which is exempt from the classified service, and establish a compensation rate for this classification.
And this one I've pulled to the next because it's an emergency ordinance which requires 4 of us. Human Resources Director Anna Canwit is here to brief us.
Great, thank you, President of the Council and Commissioners. Anna Canwit, Director of the Bureau of Human Resources, bringing forward to you today an ordinance to create a new classification of a Deputy Chief of Police. In the past, the Police Bureau has been organized with a deputy chief in addition to assistant chiefs, and it is an organizational structure that is familiar to our new chief, Danielle Outlaw, and one that we agree with her is a very efficient and good way in terms of organizing the structure of the Police Bureau under her leadership. So that is the ordinance before you today. The fiscal impact statement does go through what are some one-time costs and then the cost of the position as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Canwett? I have one on the budget side of it, the funding of it. Is Andrew Scott, the City Budget Officer? Yes, he's here also. Could I ask you to come forward, please? Introduce yourself for the record. Introduce yourself for the record,
Yes,
please.
Andrew Scott, City Budget Director.
So my question is there a good way to go about funding this in terms of establishing protocols and what we usually do?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. Yeah, I think the idea, assuming the council creates the position and the Police Bureau moves forward with funding, they have made a request in the fall budget supplemental for additional funding. As all of you know, there's only one-time funding available in the budget supplemental, and when we create these types of new positions, we do like to make them ongoing in terms of the overall hiring. So the plan that the Mayor's Office is working with the Police Bureau on would be to allocate one-time funding for the 2017-18 costs. We do estimate those costs at about $346,000, and that includes salary and benefits for the deputy chief position, as well as an administrative assistant position, and then some also materials and services in addition to that. The Police Bureau would then be asked to reallocate ongoing funding from elsewhere in their budget, so that the deputy chief position would be funded ongoing. And those could come from existing vacant positions, materials and services, et cetera, and the Police Bureau would be asked to do that. The Police Bureau could then come forward in the 18-19 budget and ask for council to restore funding to wherever that funding was reallocated from. So it's a kind of a two-step process, but that way the deputy chief position, they would receive ongoing position authority, one-time funding. The Police Bureau would then make that ongoing, and then in the budget process, we would deal with the implications of that.
And do they need to do the allocation in the fall bump, or would it be more normal to find it with savings within the Bureau and then come back in the spring bump?
That's purely a council decision in terms of whether they want to ask the Bureau to also look for one-time savings in the current budget and come back in the spring, or allocate the funding now.
Okay, and is council making a choice on that issue at this point?
It would be when the fall bump comes back on November 8th.
Okay.
Would be the decision point.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Burke Nelson from the city, from Mayor Wheeler's office.
Good morning, everyone. Burke Nelson, Senior Advisor to Mayor Ted Wheeler. Unfortunately, he's unable to join us today, but he passed along a few words that he wanted me to share on behalf of this position. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to outline the Mayor's thoughts on the creation of the Deputy Chief position in the Portland Police Bureau. The Mayor supports the creation of this position. When the Mayor conducted a national search for Portland's next police chief, his goal was to recruit the best available talent. Daniel Outlaw became the Mayor's clear choice for the position after a rigorous application process. Chief Outlaw interviewed the city staff, 3 community panels, and finally the Mayor personally. Our city is fortunate to have her leading the Police Bureau. As part of their discussions, the Mayor asked Chief Outlaw what tools she would require to be able to succeed in her new position. Her list of requests was not long, but it included the creation of a deputy chief position. Chief Outlaw served as deputy chief in the Oakland Police Department and is comfortable with that managerial structure. She has clear ideas about her role as police chief and the operations of the Police Bureau, and this position will help her realize that vision. While the Mayor is not here to formally cast his vote in support, he appreciates that his colleagues on the council have taken the request from the chief and Bureau under strong consideration, and he is hopeful for your support of the chief's desired management structure. So in my own words, I'd just like to say that Chief Outlaw, and having worked with the Portland Police Bureau, I think she's an exceptional leader. And for her to succeed, she's asked for this one position to be created so she could be the best possible chief to the city of Portland. And for that opportunity to come to pass, she believes in her own experience that this is the best way for her to be the best possible chief for the city of Portland. That's it.
Thank you. Does any of my colleagues have questions?
Is this position subject to an open recruitment?
Yes.
Commissioner Udaley?
I just feel the need to say that I have no issue with her request for the position. I am struggling with the combined total of the two asks in the fall bump because it's over half of the money that we can allocate. So I'm interested in whether the Bureau can find that funding in their existing budget.
And as Andrew Scott pointed out, that we'll have that discussion because I share your concerns with the fall bump.
Okay, I guess I'm not clear because I read the financial and budgetary impacts, but we're not making that commitment today?
The action for council today is just creation of the
Okay.
classification.
Okay.
Yeah, the budget decisions will be in the bump and the 2018-19 budget process.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Before I call for public testimony, I'd like just to make a comment, and that is that I know coming into City Hall, as all of my colleagues do, how very important it is to have somebody who's second in command, who you can absolutely trust, who you can work well with them, and who is the person who's got your back. So I support this position. Also, I'd remind everybody that when Chief Marshman became chief, he demoted all of the assistant chiefs. So I've heard it said, and that was not popular inside the Bureau or outside the Bureau. I've heard suggestions or read suggestions from community members saying, well, just give this person that Chief Outlaw wants one of the assistant chief positions. Those positions are currently full, so it would mean demoting somebody, and Chief Outlaw really hasn't had the opportunity to get to know the strengths and weaknesses of all of her assistant chiefs. So for these reasons, I'm leaning towards supporting this. I look forward to some public testimony.
May I, and I thank my colleague for her comments. In 3 different bureaus that I've had a leadership role, Parks and the city's utilities, we have created deputy director positions for a variety of reasons. Number one, there was too much of a burden placed on the director, and there needed to be someone that he or she could delegate core functions. Number two, we have a problem in the city with succession planning. We don't do a very good job of thinking about what happens if there's a vacancy. And so the deputy director positions became leadership opportunities for people to get some on the ground training, and then hopefully at some point be poised to compete fairly for an opening. And in fact, in all 3 bureaus, the deputy director today is a woman, highly qualified woman who competed for the job, who is being essentially trained to at some point be eligible for other leadership positions within the city. So for sort of good management reasons and workload, leadership development, and other reasons, we have found creating the deputy director position in all 3 bureaus incredibly effective.
Commissioner, may I add one comment to that?
Yes, please.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said, Commissioner Fish. I think the other advantage, and we've seen this in other bureaus, when you have a clear deputy director, is who's in charge and what authority they have when the leader of the bureau is not present for whatever reason. And that is immensely helpful. And of course, in a bureau like the Police Bureau, is probably even more important than some of the other bureaus, but so that bureaus know, citizens know, council knows when the director is not there, you have a deputy director, assistant director that has full authority to function as the leader of the bureau is hugely important.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. We're going to go to public testimony. I want to start by thanking everybody for making your feelings about this known without interrupting for the most part, and I'm very grateful for that. So we didn't have a sign-up because it was on consent. Would anybody like to testify on 1155? Yes. Then please come on forward.
Star Stoffer here. I'm against it, and let me tell you why. Outlaw has demonstrated that she has no control over the Portland Police, and if she does, then she supports Sergeant Nia in his predatory behavior against a member of our community who is both mentally and physically disabled. And he preyed on this young individual who is also houseless to be an informant, and has put this person at great risk in the community, both with the police and the rest of the community, and has ripped their community away from them. If this is the kind of stuff that Outlaw supports, if this is the kind of leadership that she represents, she needs to get out. We don't want her here either. And I certainly don't trust any judgment she may or may not have on any deputy chiefs when we have a police department that is running around preying on young people at the age of 19 and manipulating them and having improper conversation, of which there is proof through text messages and otherwise being released to the public. She supports this. Who's going to be the new deputy? Sergeant Nia, or is it going to be Sergeant Hall? Maybe Marshman or Kruger, the Nazi cop. I mean, how do we decide who the new deputy chief is going to be? And $300,000. Whew. That's a lot of money. How about some investment in de-escalation? How about some investment in sensitivity training? How about teaching cops that being almost 40 years old and flirting with a child through text messages and making them feel important and manipulating them is not okay? How about we tell the cops in the back that drawing your gun before attempting any other tactic of de-escalation is improper and it's murder? No, we should elevate more in the community. We should send a message to the Portland Police that they can just do whatever they want to whoever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and that we're just going to keep giving them money. If they want to talk about budget, let's talk about de-escalation. Why don't they pull some of the money from their $4 million budget request for practice ammunition and utilize that for this Nazi deputy chief? I don't care who Outlaw is or where she comes from. She is an enemy to this community. She is dangerous, and they are all out of control. How many children have to die? How many children are going to be manipulated? What's this person supposed to do now that, the Portland Police have so irresponsibly handled her life and put everything, including her housing, in jeopardy? What's she supposed to do? What are they supposed to do now, this person? Now that the police are done with them and wash their hands. I am so disgusted with this city and its worship of these Nazi disgusting cops. Shame on every single cop.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Joe Walls, and I represent Individuals for Justice. And we take no money from the city, none. Just wanted to lay that out. Be nice if the nonprofits would make that statement. There are three things I will present. The first was brought out by Patty, and she suggested that you're going to waste $250,000 to $500,000 because you know almost nothing about this police chief. Just got here. So what's the rush? I thought that was a pretty good question. The second question came from Bruce, and he asked, is this a buffer between the new police chief and the mayor? Is that what this is all about? Because if you look at the documentation you submitted, it is the mayor who's going to make this selection. It's amazing that he's not here. I don't know where he is. It's amazing that he's not here to answer that question. Are you the buffer? Or is this person you're hiring for $250,000 a buffer? Like they do in the mafia? They have lots of buffers. The third question comes from me. You have 3 assistant chiefs, and now you want another one. The first thing that this new chief did was put hoods on the protesters. That's why you see us putting hoods on us, as a demonstration of our anger over that. And we asked each and every one of you to make a statement, and you said nothing. we are against this, not so much that if the chief wants to bring in someone that she can work with outside, that's kind of interesting. But we don't think that's going to happen. We think you're going to select the person. We think the mayor is going to select the person. And I don't think the chief's going to have a damn thing to say about it. We ask you guys for transparency. And what you give us is closed doors over and over and over again. I mean, it gets to the point where it's almost comical, where we are discussing police items and we have police here with their guns. Is that not intimidation? Mm-hmm. If I brought in all of my friends and they had pitchforks, wouldn't you get a little nervous talking about the protest? Keep the cops out of here with their guns. Tell them to come in civvies. How hard is that?
Thank you.
My name is Mimi Gurman, and I've thought about this for a little while. The new chief was hired because supposedly she could do the job. She wasn't hired because she could do the job and then a few days in, a few weeks in, tell the city that she can't do the job unless she has this, that, or the other thing. So I don't know why that is. I don't know why we're even listening to her requests, and she wasn't hired on that basis, at least as far as the city knows. The flip side to that is, if it is so untenable for her to do her job with the police force that exists in Portland, we should know that. We should know, what is it that you know that we don't know, except activists, because we all know this, in the corruption of our police force, that you need a buffer between whoever it is, you and the cops. And why should there be a buffer between she and the cops, first of all? But clearly she needs one. That's a really disturbing issue. Chloe, do not laugh at me. It's amazing that you're in here, and I know that you're in here. I know that you're in here because
you don't know what I'm laughing at. You should keep going with your testimony.
Chloe, continue. Go ahead. Let's make this about you. I'd like more time, please, on my 3 minutes.
No.
Can I get some more time? No, Amanda?
No, please keep going on what you're trying to do.
What I'm trying to do is express that this is what our police force does. Does she need more help in getting more people to do this to the people of Portland? People don't understand this. People were hooded at a protest, blocking ICE from picking up people who they should never be picking up with the help of the police. Chloe, you decided that this was okay because some protesters said that this is okay. This is not okay. This is not okay. The chief is not okay. The mayor unraveling his undying love for our police force is not okay. Killing our kids on the street is not okay. Terrorizing activists is not okay. Chloe, silencing activists is not okay. Chloe, walking out during testimony of activists at this table most of the time when you can, because Ted is usually here, is not okay. I don't know why you feel such privilege, but clearly the cops feel it too, the mayor feels it too, the police feel it too, which is why they do not de-escalate. They have no need to de-escalate. They get more money every single few months that they come in here and say, I'm sorry, we need more money for target, for bullets, for live ammo, for target practice. How disgusting of all of you to even listen to her desire to have another go-between, another buffer between the truth and the people. I want the truth. I want a statement as to why she needs that. What the hell is wrong with the police force that she needs a buffer zone?
Thank you.
Where's the new police chief? Why is she not here?
By the way,
If
I keep
anybody
getting
else
messages from your
wants to sign up.
constituents, Chloe, about why it is you feel like you can walk out. You might want to try answering those messages. I'm not going to hold
I don't have a sign-up sheet, so I don't know if there's more people. Anybody else want
I
to
don't see anybody else coming
testify?
up. If you'd like to testify, come up now, please. And then after this, the public testimony is closed. Name for the record, please.
I want you to think about something.
Name for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Robert West. I'm with From the Police 911. And I want you to think about something. And that is, we have a problem with the police. Okay, they're corrupt. They're not doing their job. And you guys want to hire more cops. You want to bring in more administrative people. I suspect from Oakland, of course, which has a problem with their police force also. If the police chief cannot do her job and she needs someone else, then you need to find another police chief. I can't go to the Safeway and get a job and say, well, hey, I can't do my job unless I have someone else here to help me do it. I'd lose my job. The city should not be a place for officers to be able to come here and say, well, I can't do my job without another officer. Okay? There's times out there when only one officer responds. Okay? There's times, and it just baffles me that you guys that we're even discussing about bringing in another person. And I read in the paper today that they want 85 new police officers. That is totally ridiculous. The city shouldn't be getting that. The city can't even control what they got. And you're going to hire new officers? Why don't you control what you got? Why don't you get them under control? Why don't you get them to stop texting kids? Why don't you get them to stop picking up children on 82nd, picking up prostitutes on 82nd? I've heard from 3 prostitutes that cops have made threats. Either they go to jail or they do sexual favors. To you guys, that's acceptable? If I go out there and I threaten some lady, I get charged with rape. This is a real serious situation. You guys need to take control of your police force before someone else comes in and takes care of it for you. New Orleans learned they had the feds come in. Is that what you guys want? The feds to come in and take over your police force? For you to pay a federal officer to decide to make the decisions that you guys can't make? Is that what you want?
Thank you for testimony. Can you make this really brief, please?
Yes. Good morning. I'm Kristen Chambers here on behalf of the National Lawyers Guild. Sorry I'm out of breath. I just ran down here. And I'm sorry that I missed earlier, so I don't know exactly what's been covered. But this ordinance just came to my attention, and I think we don't have enough information about why this position is necessary. It's a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be expending.
Can I just be clear? All this does is authorizes HR to create a position. It's not funded, and we haven't figured out how to fill it. So that it's just our HR rules require that we go through this in stages. And there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to come tell us whether we should fund it or not.
Okay, so that's helpful to know. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think when we do have that opportunity, I think we would like a lot more information about why this position is necessary. We also want to know why the 3 assistant chiefs positions that currently exist don't do the job, and whether those are going to still be in place. Overall, our position is that we would like to see no additional funding going to the police, and if there needs to be a reorganization of the staffing, then that's something we'd be willing to look at and give feedback on.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Before I give my vote, I have a question or a request for the city attorney. Could you please explain to the people in chambers and watching at home what the rules are around council members coming and going from chambers throughout hours of our work here?
So during the proceeding, if there's a quorum present and one of the members needs to leave to attend to other business, they may do so. During that time period, if the number drops below 4, then the council can't take a vote on an emergency item or consent. But as long as there are 4 or 5 members present, then the council can continue to do business. The attendance of a council member is not necessary for their participation in the decision-making as long as they believe that they've got sufficient information on a legislative matter or an administrative matter to make a decision.
And there is one exception to that, correct? When we're sitting in our quasi-judicial function?
Yes, when you're acting in a quasi-judicial capacity on a land use matter or otherwise, then yes, your presence is necessary, although that can be addressed through listening to the record and identifying that you've considered the testimony and other evidence in the record before taking a vote.
Thank you. And Madam President, it's true that testimony from the public is to be directly relevant to the item in front of us. Is that correct?
It's correct. It's sometimes quicker to allow the testimony to keep going and the time to expire than to try to argue about whether it's particularly connected or not.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. So as I expressed earlier, I support the creation of this position, but I'm going to have some questions about funding. And I'm somewhat heartened to learn while I'm sitting up here that Portland Cop Watch also supports creating a new deputy chief position in the Portland Police Bureau. So today we're voting on simply creating this new classification, and I'm happy to vote aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye. Thank you very much. Now, as previously noted, we're going to go to 11:59 so that Commissioner Fish can introduce this, and then we'll go back to the time certain again. Thank you very much for your help reorganizing things.
11:59, authorize a grant agreement with Portland Rose Festival Foundation in an amount not to exceed $100,000 to enhance safety and security at all Rose Festival events in 2017 and the Grand Floral Parade.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you. Can I, Madam President, may I invite Jeff Curtis up?
Certainly.
Jeff, would you like to come up and say any remarks before we take action on this? And by the way, I just want to introduce Jeff as the leader of the Rose Festival and also as a tremendous partner of the city. It is the official festival of the city, so designated by the City Council. And today we're acting on a $100,000 grant. The Rose Festival Foundation runs a spectacular event annually, plus other events over the year. They operate independent of us. This year, as a small statement of gratitude for all their great work, we're asking the council to authorize a $100,000 grant. Jeff?
Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Distinguished council, pleasure to be up to speak to you on this topic, the Portland Rose Festival, and specifically the grant request that the funding that was included in Mayor Wheeler's budget from the conversations about what's appropriate given the challenges, at the same time the benefits to the city that the Rose Festival provides. A grant fund happens periodically under special circumstances. It's been a few years since this funding was in the budget, and I'm pleased that it ended up back in this budget. It has a special purpose, specifically, and I want to thank the council in particular for thinking about the role the Rose Festival plays, but the responsibility we as a city have to ensure that our participants of Rose Festival events can come and enjoy their events safely. At the same time, the responsibility my organization takes to those extra steps in our planning cycle that requires just about every possible step taken. I also want to note the special meeting that took place in May between all the bureaus to coordinate a unified plan for Rose Festival events, in particular our parades. And that's really what we're talking about when you talk about the parades and the requirement to make sure the public enjoys safely. So this grant has been applied and used in the context of safety, but it also has an underlying purposes of some special needs. It allows us some funding to create spaces along the parade route and working with the Oregon Convention Center where people can actually reserve spaces for special needs, wheelchair access, and things of that nature, as well as funds our City Fair Special Needs Day, in addition to some special programming that allows nonprofits that wouldn't normally have an opportunity to be in the parade, gives them some grant funding as part of the official festival. So all encompassing with the safety theme. And I just want to thank the council for understanding the role and the responsibility we all have collectively to keep our events safe collectively, and particularly our official festival. Thank you.
I want to thank Jeff, Madam President. I also want to acknowledge that on the Starlight Parade this year, we invited the leadership of the 82nd Avenue of the Roses Parade to join us because their parade was canceled. And they were allowed, they joined us in the various automobiles and were acknowledged along the parade route. So it was a proud day for the city and for our friends on the 82nd Avenue of the Roses.
Can I make one more comment?
Please.
I also, I'll be the incoming chair of the International Festival and Events Association. It's a world board. And the conversation we're having on a global scale is of this very nature. And what's the responsibility of a private sector, in this case, a nonprofit, like the Rose Festival, in partnership with its host city. And cities are having these conversations across the country, across the globe, recognizing that people need their events. Events are created to unify people, to bring people together, not divide us. And so there's a responsibility that comes with that very nature on a global scale. Thank you.
Colleagues, this was $100,000 approved in the prior budget, and this is simply the act we need to take to distribute the funds. So you've actually already authorized this appropriation. Today we're voting to authorize a grant agreement so that we can actually distribute the funds.
Thank you. Does anybody want to testify on this issue? Please come forward. On this issue, please.
I wouldn't dream of testifying about anything else. Star Stoffer, this is unbelievable. For more security, oh, well, there she goes. More security for the Rose Festival. What was wrong with this last year's security? I mean, we had, I don't know, hundreds of Department of Homeland Security agents out there, hundreds of Portland police, private security, both armed and unarmed, undercover security, both armed and unarmed. I mean, and now we need $100,000 to do it again. I'd like to know how many injuries were reported, and where was that security when I was attacked for free speech and my bullhorn was ripped in 2 pieces and I was punched right in front of Portland Police and the Department of Homeland Security, and they did nothing. $100,000 sure doesn't get you anywhere with a bunch of incompetent, moronic cops running around, but they're too busy daydreaming about texting children with disabilities and killing people of color. This is disgusting. We can't get a crosswalk. We can't get funding for actual affordable housing that's affordable for people who don't make $60,000 a year with a 650 credit score. We can't get warming shelters for our houseless community. We still don't have an emergency action plan, and yet $100,000 for this historically racist white bread Rose Festival that they're congratulating themselves on. Never represented by a person of color. We don't hear them coming up here and talking about the impacts on that community, or how about the aspect of rape culture that the Rose Festival and Fleet Week bring. Let's talk about that. Let's fund. Let's do that. Let's secure an event at the cost of $100,000 of my tax dollars as a rape survivor to perpetuate this system of racism and rape culture in our community in a sanctuary city. And better yet, why don't we just hand that money right over to the cops so that they have more assets at their disposal to go around and detain and help ICE detain people in a sanctuary city? Or maybe we can get a really fancy font that says sanctuary city at the tune of $100,000, since we're in the game of wasting money and time and putting people at jeopardy. This is disgusting. But I'm not surprised that you all support it. You're white. And the majority of the people that speak about the Rose Rose Festival are also male. So there's a lot of masculine toxicity and privileged folks who just think this is great. But if you're a person of color, somebody that's undocumented, or a woman, it's not great at all. I'm not congratulating them whatsoever. I'll be there again to protest them as usual, but it'll fall on deaf, privileged ears as usual. All the while, we'll be funding these law enforcement agencies that do nothing but terrorize communities. So congratulations, you fund terrorists. Good job.
Thank you. Before you start, I'd just like to say it's 10:37. Commissioner Fish needed to leave at 10:30 for an appointment, so if you could keep it on the topic and as brief as possible, I would appreciate it.
I have to stay on topic? That's very hard. All right. I'll try. Good morning. For the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. Our big concern here, and you haven't mentioned it, and that's what you guys do. This is for security. This is not the Rose Festival. This $100,000 is specifically mentioned for security. So where's the security going to go? You're going to hire the local police. So the cops are going to get more money. I mean, you guys keep funneling the money. What is it? If you think the more money you give these cops, the better they're going to be? No, they're not. They're a gang, and they answer to no one. Not to you, not to the mayor, not to the chief of police. We've had 5 since I've been yelling about the chief of police. Nothing's changed. This $100,000 is tax money. You say, well, we budgeted, so it really doesn't impact. It's magic money. It falls from the ceiling. It doesn't come from the citizens, Commissioner. It just falls from the ceiling. It was put over there, and we voted on it already, so it's gone. You could stop that. You could take that $100,000 and really do some good stuff. Like not giving it to the cops. Because that's what you're going to do. Most people do not understand that security in this city is run by the police department. They get hired. And they act as Portland police. Because we had a big battle over that in my court case. And that's what we found out, that you guys are hiring the cops to do private security, but they're still cops. And making a couple $100 on the side. This is so corrupt. My God. Have you no shame? In quotes.
Thank you.
I'll be super brief. Everything Star said, I'd love if there was a way to do it to have that just come back around again. There were no issues last year. I don't know why we need more money given to security. I just don't. Again, what I've noticed over the last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, coming to these things here, it's a show of nobody asks for why we actually need this. Prove to us, prove to the city with proof that this is necessary. Show us why it didn't work with the money you had. And that includes the chief issues with giving more money to the cops. That includes not asking for an audit of all of the bullets that the cops had before you gave the cops all of that money, millions of dollars, and then 4 more millions of dollars for bullets, without an audit of what'd you do with the last bullet? What'd you do with all this? There's never a question of what'd you do with all of it. I feel like if I was a better activist, I'd figure out a way to come forward to ask you guys for like $1 million, because you guys seem to give money to whoever asked for it. I know you wouldn't do it for me. I'd ask for $1 million so that I could give this money directly to the houseless, just directly, no buffers. And say, here, man, you want a house? I'm going to give you, I'd pick as many people as I could to just give that money to them and say, well, you know, if you want some help with this, cool. If not, do what you need to do with that money. We've been stealing money from you, making you live on the streets for so long while we give money to the cops repeatedly, money to contractors repeatedly, money to developers repeatedly, for nothing in return. So I'm sorry that you're late for your appointment. I'm going to stop with that and just request one more time that you guys ask before you give for proof of necessary needs of whatever money comes in, because that seems to be something you never do.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
I'll just be very brief because there were so many factually inaccurate things that were just said in that panel. Please, I didn't interrupt you. Next year's president of the Rose Festival Foundation is an African-American, Terry Bowles Atherton. There are women in leadership positions on the board, including our own Leslie Goodloe Baldwin, who I think were diminished in some of the comments were made earlier. This year, the entire court, that is the entire court of ambassadors, were women of color. I could go on and on and on about the efforts that the Rose Festival Foundation has made to better reflect the community they serve. It's a matter of public record. And finally, I just want to be clear. The Rose Festival Foundation brings about $70 million of economic value to our community. But they have to cover all their own expenses, including contracting for security and other kinds of things. This is the city's good faith gesture of offering a small offset for everything they incur. And I think, given that we've already had this before us and we discussed it and approved it, today is simply dispersing the money. Jeff, we thank you for your service and for the work you do at the foundation. And I'm honored to say aye on this application.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Fritz?
Well, thank you, Commissioner Fish, for picking up this. Yes, as you said, over $70 million of economic impact. And the reason it's been such a safe festival in the park is because this is what we do. We routinely offset some of the money for the security, which is for things like closing the streets so that people don't get run over by the MAX trains and various other things. So it's a great partnership. I've been very honored to be part of it, and thank you for your work. Aye. Thank you, Commissioner Fish.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
All right, let's get to the time certain. And again, thank you very much for your patience.
Item 1154, adopt the Livable Street Strategy to prioritize people and encourage community placemaking in the public right-of-way.
Thank you very much for being here.
I may.
Oh, sorry,
Yep.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Council President Fritz. And thank you to our presenters and to our invited guests for your patience this morning. I want to take us all back to summer in Portland, even though it's October and fall is brisk in the air and winter's knocking on the door. But you remember your neighborhood's block party or biking through the streets during Sunday parkways, or maybe heading over to your local neighborhood street fair or weekly farmer's market with friends and family. All of these activities offer Portland residents and visitors the opportunity to experience their streets and their city in new and exciting ways, and that is what this council item is all about, the Livable Streets Strategy. The Portland Bureau of Transportation has responded to what our comprehensive plan calls for, which is designing, managing, and repurposing Portland streets to create opportunities for a variety of community functions. The Livable Streets Strategy is a roadmap for the city that will reinforce the idea that public streets are public places to be enjoyed by all ages and abilities. The strategy will also, importantly, ensure that the city has consistent rules and processes in place to effectively design, implement, manage, and maintain placemaking activities in the right-of-way. And the end result will be a citywide program that helps community groups create and activate their own spaces that are unique to their own neighborhoods. Director Leah Treat and Sarah Figliozzi will start us off, and then we have a few invited special guests, and then we'll open it up for public testimony. Director Treat.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman and Commissioner Fritz and Udaly. I appreciate the opportunity to be with my staff here today to talk to you about this strategy that we have. So we believe that great cities are designed for people. If we want to have a great city, we need to put people in the front and center of our thought. And to us, that means making public space a place for people. And our priority should be embracing diverse and special elements of the people who live in our neighborhoods and encourage innovation at the same time. Our public right-of-way, which is our streets and our bridges and sidewalks and alleys and trails, they cover more than 20% of the land area in the city. So they're really our largest asset that we have and are a tremendous resource that's available to us to enhance neighborhoods and give Portlanders a place to celebrate their communities. We believe that there's a lot of untapped community energy to use this space in creative ways. And this belief was recently affirmed by the response to our Portland in the Streets community grant program. We have set aside $100,000 to seed community-driven projects, and we received over 60 proposals. So obviously we are oversubscribed, and the interest is really great in doing a lot of placemaking in our neighborhoods. So we want to harness this energy and see these community ideas realized. So we've been hard at work on the Livable Street strategy that's going to be shared with you today. And for the first time ever, this strategy is going to bring together all of our individual placemaking and community enhancing policies and programs into one single framework. So with this framework in place, we're going to be able to enhance how we implement our programs and policies and also spur some more community-inspired innovation. There are two elements I want to highlight before Sarah digs in. The first is the new Bureau-wide placemaking policy statement that encapsulates what we are already working towards, that PBOT prioritizes people by encouraging the use of the right-of-way for community gathering places, placemaking, and programming. Second is a focus on improving customer service by streamlining the permitting process and reducing barriers for applicants. We've seen amazing results already using block parties as a pilot, and Kristen here is excited to tell you all about that. So thank you so much for your support of our efforts as we continue to do this. And Sarah Figliozzi, who's coming up next, is going to walk you through the process. Kristen Aldrin will talk about the project's next steps, and then we will have testimony from the Livable Streets Strategy Stakeholder Advisory Committee members. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Leah. My name is Sarah Figliozzi, and I've lost my voice, so I apologize if it sounds horrible. It doesn't hurt, but anyway, so apologies in advance. We are asking you today to adopt, it'll be fine, by resolution. Did it not go?
That's very stoic of you. I'll be fine, I'll be fine.
I know, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. Thank you very much. So we're asking you today to adopt by resolution, thank you, the Livable Street Strategy, which calls for prioritizing people and encouraging community placemaking in the public right-of-way. And then to direct PBOT to develop the procedural guides and the regulatory updates for the implementation of the strategy. The strategy that you have before you has three main purposes. The first is that it establishes the new Bureau placemaking policy. Secondly, it informs the development of the Portland in the Streets program, and so that oversees the permitting of all the community use projects in the future. And thirdly, it establishes Bureau placemaking goals as well as a work plan for staff so that we can advance those goals. And then before I start, I want to recognize the project team. I'm one of 6. We have Kristen Aldrin, and we have scattered around, as well as a consultant team, Nelson Negard. So this is not work that we're doing alone. The idea of a placemaking strategy and a project permitting guide came from the bottom up as well as the top down. So in the last 5 years, PBOT has been approached by the community members and business members with very unique ideas. And these are different ways in which, for example, plazas, seat areas, demonstration projects for bike lanes. And for the most part, PBOT staff have been able to get to yes on these projects, or perhaps a variation of the original idea. But the key is that it highlighted an opportunity for the Bureau, that the public is clamoring for ideas, they have ideas, and that staff need the tools to be able to approve them. So it wasn't only requests from the community members, but also from our own citywide plans, as Commissioner Saltzman mentioned. The Portland plan specifically calls on PBOT to develop new designs to promote community uses on city streets, as well as to expand programs to promote community uses. And the 2035 Comprehensive Plan features at least 6 policies that speak to this work. For example, integrate both placemaking and transportation functions when designing and managing streets, and encourage repurposing street segments that are not critical for transportation connectivity to other community purposes. Excuse me. The result is that we formally launched this work a year ago with the help, multitasking, with a 12-member stakeholder advisory committee. The committee is a mix of representatives from the business community, the design community, neighborhoods, as well as partners who have experienced working with PMOT to permit community project ideas. And this work has a wide range of partners, from Venture Portland, we have Heather here, to Rosewood Initiative. So it's really reinforcing this idea that livable, active streets are for everyone. We want to sincerely thank our SAC members. They, again, spending the past year working with us and advising us and giving us their own experiences. And that I know some of them have taken time out of their busy days today. So thank you very, very much to that advisory committee. There are 2 elements of the strategy that are really pivotal to the work. The first one are the stakeholder advisory committee goals. They spent some very thoughtful time developing 4 goals that should guide PBOT's work in encouraging, vetting, and implementing community placemaking projects. I'm just going to read really fast. Reduce barriers for community-led placemaking projects, encourage placemaking projects that reflect community needs and their character, ensure citywide access to programs and equitable geographic distribution of placemaking projects, and encourage experimentation and innovation. The second element is this new bureau policy that we've been talking about. It provides direction for staff, and it confirms PBOT's position that placemaking is an appropriate use of the right-of-way, and that PBOT prioritizes the use of space for people. Our stakeholder advisory committee strongly supported the wording of the policy statement and the emphasis of the PBOT prioritizes people. It resonated so strongly with the group that they wanted the policy statement to be prioritized in the document, so it really is one of the first things that it's read by the reader. So also want to talk a little bit about what were we talking about in terms of these projects. What is community placemaking? The project primarily focuses on community-initiated projects, and in a few cases, projects that have been initiated by the city when a need is identified. They are community-driven, right? The design, the fundraising, the strategizing, it happens when the day job is done, when the kids are put to bed. And we recognize that it is a lot of work by these community groups. And we recognize that there's an opportunity to make that easier for them, to make those future interactions with city positive and helpful ones. So the Livable Street strategy outlines 40 different ways in which we can do this, but right now I'd like to introduce you to the program areas and then walk you through a sample of some of the projects. So as part of the strategy work, we identified 6 program areas and are beginning to develop implementation tools for each of them. And Kristen's going to walk you through some of those details. Many of these activities, for example, block parties, community events, the street fairs, they've been permitted by the Bureau for decades. And this is really an opportunity for us to refine those programs to really bring consistency and transparency across them. But for the new program areas, when we're thinking about pedestrian plazas, when we're thinking about demonstration projects, when we're thinking about community uses for underutilized right-of-ways, there is a need for staff for processes, and there's a need for applicants in terms of having that information of what they can and can't do. Block parties. I like to call them, these are the bread and butter of our community use permitting. And it really is PBOT's goal that asking for a block party permit and then throwing a party on the street with your neighbors is the simplest thing, and for anyone who lives in Portland. Kristen's group, who oversees this work, issued 550 permits so far this year. It's the highest number of permits ever issued, and she'll talk more about it later. Community events, from small street closures to show World Cup matches, to neighborhood farmers markets, to the Mississippi Street Fair that attracted 30,000 people. These all fall under the program area of community events. They can be very complex. Kristen and her team issues about 200 of them every year. Street paintings, nearly 60 intersection repair street paintings in the city of Portland. They typically happen through a partnership with a nonprofit city repair group, who we're deeply thankful as another SAC member of ours. And they really are wonderful venues for community building as well as grassroots efforts about how we can transform our streets into public places. Pedestrian plazas. So in 2016, community members and city staff helped create Ankeny Plaza out of 20,000 square feet of underutilized space at Southwest Ankeny, Southwest 3rd. Pedestrian plazas will be a new program area for PBOT and one in which the city will be looking for those partnerships to be able to create more public spaces that can come alive with outdoor seating, with tables, with programming. And of course, the idea for Ankeny Plaza wouldn't have been possible without the demonstration project that happened in 2014 when Better Block PDX, another valued stakeholder advisory committee member, partnered with local businesses and held a 3-day public space demonstration project in 2014. And again, that was for the plaza as well as for the protected bike lane. So demonstration projects like this really allow the city to pilot ideas, to engage the community, and to use that information to inform future decisions. In this photo here, it's a unique proposal that came from a resident of Northeast Emerson and Northeast 26th Avenue to create a neighborhood gathering and play space on, in the underutilized areas on the gravel street outside his home. And so developing a program to support projects like this one, as well as alleyway improvement ideas, will fill what is currently a void of information for the public about what is and isn't feasible in these types of areas.
Could I just stop you on that last slide?
Sorry.
If this was in a park, we would have a lot of soft things to fall on for when children fall. What are the implications? I mean, how do you consider the risks and benefits to make a decision about whether to allow something or not?
Right. Kristen, I wasn't involved in that permitting project, but I know that for all of these, we're looking at, but in terms of a fall hazard,
Maybe somebody else
can we answer that question when we come back for
Absolutely.
Q&A?
I know there are other people here to testify too, but
thank you very much.
Popped into my mum's head.
Good. All right. So street seats, art on utility boxes, parking day activities, wayfinding signage, a locally designed Portland-themed putt-putt course. Portland is full of unique ideas, and the stakeholder committee and project team recognized quickly that we have to plan ahead for them. So designing for only a set of well-defined project areas will continue to trip up staff and frustrate the public. So it's clear that the project review framework really had to accommodate unique ideas so that even these unique ones can be permitted in a timely and predictable way. Why a livable streets strategy? Well, over the past year, we have gathered our stakeholder advisory committee members, our technical advisory committee members, key PBOT staff, other bureau staff, and community members to participate in interviews, focus groups, work sessions, to uncover the answer to 3 primary questions. The first one is, how do we make it easier for the public to initiate projects, particularly in communities that have been historically underrepresented or underserved by PBOT programming? How do we ensure projects are safe, successful, and supported by the larger community? And finally, what are the missing policies and processes that are needed to support this work? So here are 3 of the issues that we came across. One, big holes, right? The project team mapped placemaking projects and events that were permitted over the previous 2 years. And the results show stark areas of the city, particularly outer East Portland, that can benefit from greater outreach, partnerships, and technical assistance to make those a reality.
And Deep Southwest, and I've got a project just for you, so I'll contact you right away.
Absolutely. And 3, as you've seen in this presentation already, PBOT has a history of supporting community placemaking projects, the standard as well as the unique. However, there are clear opportunities to provide direction, clarity on roles, responsibilities, and improve coordination amongst the bureaus. 2, there are both real and perceived barriers to applicants. So for example, knowing who to contact at the bureau or understanding the approval process, how to get an idea through the system to the permit stage. And what you see on the screen, and I don't expect you to be able to read it, are the results of a mapping session aptly named The Secret Lives of Permits. And this is where we reunited a few past permit holders with PBOT and other bureau staff. To be clear, this example was for a creative, unique project, and the city staff didn't have standard processes to fall back on. And PBOT was able to approve a variation of the applicant's idea. The exercise clearly revealed that there were a number of opportunities, including internal and external coordination. The Livable Street Strategy recommends 40 specific actions designed to advance PBOT's new placemaking goals. through a prioritization exercise, 70 actions that had been culled from best practices and recommendations from our technical advisory committee were refined to the ones that you see in the document. Through the exercise, we clearly heard from our committee that the focus over the next few years should be on partnerships, building capacity with the community to launch projects, and then testing innovative ideas. And before I hand off to Kristen, I wanted to give you a sample of some of the 40, not all of them, thank goodness. Here are 4. So, enhance customer experience. That by pairing applicants with a single point of contact at PBOT, the city can better assist people with project scoping, application questions, or liaising with other bureaus. Increase partner capacity. For example, this could mean developing leadership trainings with our partners in project implementation, volunteer training workshops, or fundraising strategies. Improve awareness and participation. So in this presentation, I've purposely avoided some of the detailed scoping and permitting issues that are really required to ensure that projects are safe, that they're clean, that they're well supported by the community. But this recommendation related to community notification standards is one of the many that would establish a level of consistency and transparency across our programs. And then evaluate and report. There was a strong feeling that this statement this strategy absolutely needed to push for innovation. And not casual innovation, but that the Bureau set targets to trial unique designs and ideas, and then report back on them, on the successes as well as the failures. So the development of the Livable Street strategy is the first effort in a 2-phase project. Kristen will speak about the next phase. This is really the development of the practical tools, the nuts and bolts. But first, she has some highlights in terms of some of the on-the-ground engagement efforts that we've done over the past summer. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Kristen Aldrin with the Bureau of Transportation. Through the creation of this strategy, we identified opportunities to make refinements to our current programs that we were able to implement right away for the 2017 season. This included many coordination meetings to strengthen our relationships and streamline our processes with our Bureau partners from the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, Parks, Fire, and Police. We also met with members of the neighborhood business associations to assist in permitting in their annual street fairs. And I'm proud to highlight a few other examples of this work that happened over this past year. The first being the pilot, or the block party program. In examining our block party permit distribution over the past few years, we observed that far less permits were issued in East Portland, where lower income and people of color predominate. We designated 13 neighborhoods east of 82nd and Cully as our pilot project area. And we partnered with the Office of Neighborhood Involvement Crime Prevention Group to help identify barriers that contributed to this under-participation. And in the effort to relieve the identified barriers, the pilot program implemented online applications and a payment system citywide, translated application documents into 5 languages. We waived permit fees in the pilot program area. And as shown at the bottom picture, we made pink street closed barricades available free of charge at local community centers within the pilot project area. We also participated in community outreach events and were able to connect directly with residents on what Portland in the Street programming meant to them. We attended events such as Sunday Parkways, Oregon Walks Lentz Founders Fair, and the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon's Jade Night Market. This granted us the opportunity to share the pilot project's simple and accessible permit process in an informal space. Some perceptions we heard from residents were that it was not possible to close a street, or it was too costly or prohibited. And it was valuable to empower these residents and relay our message that the street is for people. And now that the season is past, the data shows that we issued 4 times as many block party permits in the pilot area than in the previous year. And we realize that the success of any program is a continual evaluation and assessment in order to identify areas to improve. We have since conducted a follow-up survey with the pilot project permittees, and they shared some compelling stories. One family in Cully had never seen or met some neighbors despite having lived on the same street for 14 years, and they noted that after the first block party this summer, they wished they could have one every month. And many more reported looking forward to next year to do it again. So we feel that the pilot project was a success. As Sarah has mentioned, the adoption, thanks, Sarah. The adoption of the Livable Street strategy sets the foundation for development of the Portland in the Streets program. In developing this program framework, there are two big shifts in our approach in responding to community use requests for permits. The first is revising our program review framework. This is the diagram you see here, so that there is a clear focus on streamlining, improving internal coordination, and ensuring consistency across programs, and develop application material and program requirements that are consistent, transparent, and predictable. The second shift is putting the applicant first. This means providing greater hands-on assistance to applicants through the permitting process across all program areas. For example, proactive outreach, much like the work we did this past summer, particularly in areas of historically underrepresented and underserved by PBOT programming. An online community toolkit that provides applicants resources to help with design inspiration, funding resources, and identifying community partners. Technical assistance, such as project scoping, helping in developing traffic control plans, identifying financial assistance and opportunities, and coordinating with other bureaus to assist with the other required city permits. So these shifts will translate into the work that we will do over the next several months. Specifically, the next phase of the work is focused on 3 deliverables. We have, the first is the external facing online community information and toolkit. These are updates to our applications, our website, and resources. And secondly is the internal facing set of project management tools and procedures. And thirdly, the regulatory updates that will bring city code into alignment with the Livable Street strategy. So your support today will direct our work on these deliverables, and we will return to City Council in February to present them. So that concludes our presentation today. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was delightful, well worth waiting for. I appreciate, again, your forbearance.
We have one invited panel. That includes Heather Hale of Venture Portland, Ann Gordon, Living Cully, and Ryan Hashagan with Better Block PDX.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Heather Hale, and I'm the Executive Director of Venture Portland. As you know, Venture Portland is the support organization for the city's 50 neighborhood business districts, which together contain 19,200 businesses and provide 270,000 jobs. In Portland neighborhood businesses, 98% of them have 5 or fewer employees. So in this city, small is really big. For the last year, I have had the pleasure of serving on PBOT's Livable Street Stakeholder Advisory Committee, and on behalf of Venture Portland and neighborhood business districts, I'm proud to support the strategy presented to you today. Neighborhood businesses and business districts depend on Portland's streets and sidewalks to transport customers, employees, and goods. Portland's volunteer-run neighborhood business district associations also rely on these same streets and sidewalks as the venue for the more than 100 large public events they host each year that collectively draw more than 1 million attendees. If you aren't already planning to do it, I strongly encourage you to participate in one of the dozen Halloween events that are going to be going on in neighborhood business districts, family-friendly, safe trick-or-treating that will happen starting this Thursday through Halloween. For the last 4 years, I've worked closely with PBOT's committed staff, Commissioner Fish, and his office to ensure that 100% of these events received their requested street or sidewalk closure permits. PBOT's new Livable Streets strategy streamlines the current unwieldy permit process into an easy-to-understand and access framework that includes significant technical assistance to help all of Portland's volunteer-run groups get to yes and implement successful community projects and events. Neighborhood business owners are entrepreneurs and innovators who started their businesses because they believed that their idea was the idea. PBOT's Livable Streets strategy embraces and encourages experimentation and innovation as key elements in community events and placemaking activities. More importantly, however, it takes into account the critical life, health, safety lessons learned during the Better Broadway project on Northeast Broadway last year and embeds necessary and appropriate community and volunteer safeguards into the planning, implementation, and evaluation process of all pilot projects. By ensuring requirements that are appropriate to the project's level of complexity, business outreach, and PBOT inspections during setup, installation, and implementation, the strategy mitigates risk while supporting project success. Finally, as I said earlier, in Portland, small is really big. While the entire Livable Streets strategy is exciting, the biggest change is in just 3 small words that underpin the entire strategy. PBOT prioritizes people. This seismic shift emphasizes reducing barriers for community-led projects, ensuring citywide access to and equitable distribution of placemaking activities, and encouraging placemaking that reflects community needs and character. It is exceptional and sets a standard I wish all bureaus would implement. On behalf of the Venture Portland Board and neighborhood business districts citywide, thank you for continuing to invest in Portland's neighborhood businesses and districts. I urge you to approve the Livable Streets strategy.
Thank you. Anna?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective on the Livable Streets strategy. My name is Anna Gordon. I'm here representing Living Cully, and was also a member of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. Living Cully is a collaboration between Verde, Hacienda CDC, the Native American Youth and Family Center, and Habitat for Humanity, and we work directly with community in Northeast Portland's Cully neighborhood. I fully support the Livable Streets strategy, in particular, the need for geographic equity in project distribution and access. There is a need for community placemaking projects citywide, and especially in areas of East Portland that have not had prior opportunities. In Cully, for example, safe access to parks and open spaces are a high priority for community members. Living Cully is currently working with the city to permit a system of wayfinding signs, a 3-mile series of maps and signage to direct pedestrians and bicyclists to Cully Park, Whitaker Ponds, Cunnamux Park, and other green spaces. Wayfinding systems, as you may know, are often found in downtowns or commercial districts, not in low-income neighborhoods. We would love to see other similar community-led efforts in many areas of Portland, including outer East Portland. Other elements of the strategy that have been important for Living Cully include PBOT's commitment to providing culturally responsive staff and translated materials. We are very excited that the city recognizes that translation services, culturally responsive staff, and technical assistance are the first steps in reducing barriers for many groups. We also value PBOT's commitment to target outreach and partnerships to community organizations that directly serve communities who have traditionally not had access to livable streets opportunities. We also value the flexibility in their permitting system to vet projects that are desired by the community. Our wayfinding project, for example, did not fit into a defined city box, but staff were willing to work through the unknown with us. The proposed permitting framework process is designed so that these types of projects are easier for staff and applicants to work through together. Lastly, I appreciate the opportunity that PBOT has provided for placemaking grant opportunities for community groups. Safe access to public spaces is a high priority for our community. As in much of East Portland, there are insufficient safe crossings and sidewalks for families to be able to access park and community spaces in Cully. We know that City Council and PBOT are both prioritizing safe streets, and we appreciate your efforts in that area. We believe that livable streets and safe streets go hand in hand, so I thank you for your work on both fronts.
Thank you. Ryan?
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. My name is Ryan Hashkin, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Better Block PDX in support of the Livable Streets strategy. Our nonprofit is devoted to reimagining our public spaces using temporary traffic control and demonstration projects. These projects help foster community innovation, experimentation, conversations, and collaboration by trying out new ideas. This new livable street strategy makes implementing demonstration projects accessible to a wider range of the city, and that's why we support it. I personally got involved with Better Block PDX as a business owner and operator in Old Town. Our neighborhood had been discussing ideas for improving neighborhood streets for many, many years. Our neighborhood business group had agreed upon a street streamlining of 3rd Avenue to include crosswalks, lower vehicle speeds, and a new plaza at Ankeny. At that time, we were told that there was not a permit available to pursue that project. But with the work of Better Block and the creative work of PBOT at the time, we were able to get everyone to yes by testing out a 3-day plaza and street streamlining of 3rd Avenue. That project had great community support. It was originated by neighbors and businesses. It was brought to life by volunteers and imaginative city staff. And it was sponsored by businesses, social services, and governmental leaders. These demonstration projects help move conversations forward, find consensus and common ground, and provide opportunities for the city to take action. Within 18 months of that project, our neighborhood had 14 new crosswalks, a restriped 3rd Avenue, and Portland's newest plaza, sponsored by the PDC and PBOT. I'm here to express the support of Better Block PDX for this new livable street strategy. This new policy will foster, permit, and encourage new ideas from a wider range of participants throughout the city. This new policy will lower the barriers to experimentation and innovation for community and business groups. This policy also formalizes previous ad hoc strategies for permitting demonstration projects. This livable street strategy will help encourage a more equitable distribution of livable streets projects by formalizing and democratizing the application process. This new strategy also directs city permitting staff to make the process more approachable, so they're not just receiving project applications from wannabe urban planners like myself. We especially want to thank PBOT staff for carefully working with stakeholders to craft this new policy, and we are very excited to see how PBOT has embraced Livable Streets project. This new policy will encourage new ideas that enhance our public spaces citywide, and we encourage you to support it.
Thank you very much, all of you. That concludes the invited testimony.
Thank you, that's great. Do we have a sign up?
Yes, we have 7 people signed up. The first 3 are Ann Sanderson, Mimi Nohitz-Germain, and Joe Walsh.
Good morning, thank you for your patience.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ann Sanderson, and I'm here as the District Manager of Old Town Chinatown Community Association. And we're here to support PBOT's Livable Street Strategy on behalf of Old Town. As you know, the Old Town street environment is challenging, and we have demographics that are unlike any others in town. That means that we have these unique challenges when we want to do the kinds of things that neighborhoods do. And we have to think outside the box when we want to do something, and a street fair isn't going to work in our environment. Instead, this summer, we did think outside the box, and we did Art for Everyone. Our program was called Art in the Open. It was a 2-day open-air performance art festival where we activated the right-of-way on the sidewalks, parking places, and on our festival street to bring performance artists to everyone, no matter who you were, as long as you were in Old Town. And we encouraged everyone to come down to it. It was amazing. We had musicians and puppeteers and taiko drummers and lion dancers and a couple of bands, living statues, stilt walkers, all throughout for 2 days in Old Town. And it was amazing. And that use of right-of-way was made possible by PBOT because with their mission of making sure that we could do creative programming, we were able to call them up and say, hey, we have an idea. And it worked. So we absolutely were supportive of this program and the Portland in the Streets grant program as well, because it's going to allow us to do things in the future that make art for everyone and make community for everyone, and particularly in Old Town. So we support the living streets, and we want to continue to work creatively and positively.
Thank you for your partnership. That's great.
My name is Mimi Gurman, and I am not coming up to testify against this program, but I want to clarify. There are many of us, especially in St. John's, who cannot get crosswalks put in, proper crosswalks from PBOT, and we would love to have safe streets in Fessenden, and I've spoken with you, Commissioner Saltzman, about this. We still cannot get proper crosswalks to have livable streets in our community. And while all of this is great, I found it kind of appalling on one hand, and not the flip side, that there were 14 new crosswalks in one community, which is amazing, and we can't get one to support the kids that cross Fessenden and our friends who have wheelchairs and are differently abled in our community. I mean, 14 crosswalks in one community within, what, the last little while I took it. I don't know the timeline on that, but wow, good for them, not good for us. As far as livable streets, I'm not sure what the definition of a livable street is, but knowing that streets don't live and people on them do, I find that we could do better. And that's what I wanted to say, that PBOT can do better. The program itself, it's great. Having performance artists for people is great. I'm a performance artist. I'm completely down with all that. But I don't think that it should be to the exclusion of certain communities. And I feel that St. John's is being excluded. And I'm not sure why, but I do know that the people who need the safe streets in our community are not receiving that at all. And I wanted to just clarify that while this is a huge love fest for PBOT for the last 45 minutes, we are not receiving any of the love that PBOT is putting out. And we could use some in St. John's, not in the form of love, but in true crosswalks with flashing lights so that our kids and our people in wheelchairs can get across Fessenden. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. For the record, I represent Individuals for Justice, and we still do not take any money. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and the police department there ran a program, PAL, Police Athletic League. And what they would do is very similar to what you guys are doing, is they would block off certain streets, especially in the summertime. They would turn on the hydrants and keep the city kids cool that way. So we're very sensitive to these type of programs of blocking off streets from time to time and having block parties and have the kids do drawings and stuff like that. One of my big concerns on this is we have a lot of people living on the streets right now. Are we going to run into a confrontation where you want to do something in an area and you have people living there in tents and somebody's got to move or somebody's got to back off? Is there any provision in this program that would say at least we would have some negotiations of how to do that? I don't see that in any of the supporting documentations. I don't know if anybody thought about it. It was an incredibly good report that was given to you. I was impressed with it. I mean, they found, I think, if I heard it right, 20,000 square feet where they could do all this kind of stuff. Well, if we spend that kind of money on that kind of report, why can't we do that with the people that are living on the streets and say, maybe we can find places where they can camp, where they're not going to be raided and they're not going to be swept? Okay? Why can't we do that? This report was so good, so in-depth. I mean, they looked at a lot of stuff. Why can't we do that for the houseless? You know, we've been screwing around with this. We've been spending millions of dollars on brick and mortar, like brick and mortar. What about a study like this? That we actually do it and say, what's the best practices? We keep yelling at you for 10 years about different cities and you ignore them. But you come with a report today that's really impressive, and we support it. It's really hard for us to support something you're doing. It's like supporting something Trump says. You know, you don't like doing that at all. But this is a good program, and it should go forward. But you should expand it and ask these people, because they know what they're doing, to do a study. Find out some places where we can put people where they're not hassled.
Thank you.
Yes, I know I went over. I tried not to, though.
The next three are Star Stoffer, Hazel Dennis, and Michael O'Callahan.
I believe Star left.
Okay, let's go with Terry Parker then.
And anybody else who'd like to testify, please come on up. Thanks, Terry. Good morning. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Terry Parker. I live in Northeast Portland. This resolution correctly identifies streets as public spaces to foster inclusive community connections. The primary purpose of these connections is for the movement of people and goods. When this movement is interrupted by welcomed festivals or community events, the city must ensure alternative routes are available, clearly marked and identified to minimize adding congestion. The city must also ensure there is enough personnel on hand, police, staff, and/or volunteers to safely manage any detour in the event itself. Portland has a parking problem. Just ask and listen to about any neighborhood association that includes single-family residents and has new multi-unit development taking place. 72% of households in developments with inadequate parking or no parking have one or more cars. These cars, frequently belonging to weekend warriors, all too often end up filling up and being stored on the adjacent streets 24/7. This is especially true when an alternative transport mode is utilized for the weekday commute. The problem exists because the city fails to require adequate off-street parking for car storage with new residential development. Both BPS and PBOT work in fantasyland silos, thereby failing to address and coordinate some of the reality check needs of the people. In that funding for most streets and TSP projects comes from motorist-paid taxes and fees, the mode hierarchy for prioritizing transportation decisions is a form of discrimination. When designing, managing, or possibly repurposing Portland streets to create opportunities for a variety of community functions, on-street parking, commonly necessary for small businesses to survive, needs to be maintained or replaced. Parking must also be included and/or maintained with the integration of plazas and other gatherings places into neighborhoods. Any proposed reduction of motor vehicle lanes must require both an operational and environmental impact statement and be disallowed if the reduction will create more congestion or adds travel time, thereby adding emissions. Given the fast pace of population growth in Portland, looking through an equity lens, placemaking opportunities and permanent placemaking infrastructure in the streets designed to improve social connections must also produce improvements for the movement of people and goods, including people driving automobiles. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all who signed up.
Great, thank you. So we can now vote on the resolution.
Daly?
Well, I'd like to thank PBOT for their lovely presentation, and I'd also like to congratulate you because it's not very often that one receives praise from Mr. Walsh, so good job. I'm a fan of the concept of placemaking. I'm all for taking back streets for people. I love the city repair project and have been following their work for almost, well, I mean, as long as they've been around. But I do want to acknowledge some of the comments that were made by community members today. It is really hard to think about or talk about livable streets when we know so many people are living on our streets, and that certainly some streets are more livable than others, and some communities are reaping more benefits than others from these kinds of policies. So I know that it's our shared intent to be equitable in how we support communities, and I just wanted to acknowledge, although those people are gone, that I do share their concerns and understand the issues they're raising. And with that, I'm happy to vote aye.
Saltzman.
Well, I want to thank the project team, Sarah, Kristen, and everybody else who worked on this, our stakeholder advisory committee too, for the great job that they have done in helping to shape this living, breathing, livable streets strategy. I'm very impressed just from the photographs of the types of creative uses of our streets that people are coming up with. So it's indeed good that PBOT prioritizes people. And I also want to recognize Margie Bradway in her last appearance before City Council, at least last appearance as a city employee. She is moving on to a senior management position at Metro. She's been our active transportation manager, and she has done a great job and has tremendous enthusiasm and passion for her job, and those are qualities that will serve her well in every capacity that she serves in the future. So thank you, Margie, for your great work for our city, and I am pleased to vote aye.
Fritz.
Well, I'll definitely add my thanks to Margie for all your work at the city, and gives me another good reason to go to the Metro Policy Advisory Committee meeting, so I look forward to crossing paths with you again there. Thanks to everybody. This is really exciting. As somebody whose primary mode of transportation is walking whenever I can, and then transit, I want to give credit to Mark Lakeman and the Village Building Conversion, City Repair. I mean, the Sherritt Square, which was the one that got this whole thing started, was back in 95 or 96, where Mark and his neighbours did an intersection repair, as they called it. And then Commissioner Charlie Hales was Transportation Commissioner and figured out, yeah, this is a good thing, let's keep doing these. And since then, when I do have to drive to go to various places that are almost transit inaccessible, especially to get back to my neighbourhood in Deep Southwest, I often kind of stop in my driving because you come to an intersection that's so pretty and beautiful, and you know that neighbours from around it created that, and it's theirs, and they're all different. You know, the sunflower one in Sunnyside is one of my favourite, but they're fantastic. And as I said, I've been longing for quite some time to make use of the view of Mount Hood that can be seen from the centre of an intersection near my home. So I will start talking with my neighbours. But thanks to Mark Lakeman, the Village Building Convergence, if you don't know about it, it brings people from all over the world to do volunteer projects here in Portland. I helped with the Arleta Triangle and with a project in Foster, and basically playing with mud. It was what it seemed like, but in fact we created some really beautiful spaces, and it's the community doing that, and I'm so happy that this is now becoming official policy. I want to thank the whole team who presented, Noel Mickelberry, who's the current Oregon Walks leader, carrying on the very good footsteps of Steph Ralph, Riddy DeCruz with City Repair, who's again continues to work with Mark Lakeman, Brian Hoop and Stephanie Reynolds, formerly with the Office of Neighbourhood Involvement, were very key, I know, and Alan Schmidt in Portland Parks and Recreation. I appreciate all that he's contributed to this. And I do also appreciate the attention to equity and what is it that we need to do to make this more accessible to most people. So as Janine Gates on my staff identified, really simplifying the permitting process, less time to issue permits, online applications, low or no cost street barricades, and establishing this policy which actually supports the program and is intended to make it much easier to use. So thank you. I hope we have lots of projects that put you through your paces, and I'm sure we'll learn from them. And thanks, Commissioner Saltzman, for your leadership on this. Aye. That finally concludes our time certain, and again, thank you very much to all who are here. What we're going to do now is go through the rest of the regular agenda, and then we'll do the 2 items remaining from consent at the end of those. So please read item 1136, please.
You said 1163?
Yes, I meant 1163.
Thank you. Accept bid of Hydrotemp Mechanical, Inc. for the Justice Center restroom upgrade and repipe project for $1,796,289.
Thank you. This is one of Mayor Wheeler's items. Again, thank you for your patience. Please tell us all about this.
Yeah, so my name is Sharon Raymore. I work in the BIBS Facilities Department. I'm going to be the project manager seeing this through construction. This project entails a repiping of the main distribution water lines in a section of the building, as well as ADA upgrades in the police bureau levels and in Central Precinct.
Good morning, I'm Larry Palat, Procurement Services. I'll do the short version here, we're running behind. You have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award to Hydrotemp Mechanical for the Justice Center restroom upgrade and repipe. The amount is $1,796,289. It's 5.6% over the engineer's estimate, which unfortunately, the way things have been lately, isn't all that bad. The OMF and Procurement Service identified an aspirational goal of 20%, as we always do. There is a total of $360,365, 20.4% DMW ESP participation in the project, so all of the outreach and subcontracting goals were met. Hydrotemp is not a certified firm. They are located in Wilsonville, Oregon. They are fully compliant with all of the city's contracting responsibilities, and funds are available in the current cost center. If you have any questions relative to the project, I'd be happy to the solicitation part of the project, be happy to try to answer them.
Any questions, Commissioner Saltzman?
No.
Did we have any public testimony on this?
This is a report. We did not set out a sign-up sheet.
Okay, that's fine. And then Commissioner Daly will be right back. She had some urgent business to take care of. She'll be right back. But you two can take a seat. Thank you.
That's okay. If she doesn't want to work here, she can leave. She can leave. Let her resign. Am I able to speak, or do I have to wait for the person that doesn't want to do her job?
It's your choice.
Okay, then I will move forward. Thank you. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. The only concern I have on this, does the City of Portland own the Justice Center? That's my only question to you, and why are we funding this? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good question. Would you care to answer that?
So in my understanding, the Justice Center is a co-owned cooperative with Multnomah County. So there's a percentage division between that, the maintenance that takes place, and the infrastructure is divided and also kind of co-funded as well.
So is the county putting money into this project as well?
Yes.
Yeah, the county and originally the county was going to manage the project. The management of the project shifted to the city, and the county is contributing, I think it's 48% of the total cost.
I believe that's correct.
Thank you. Mr. West, did you want to have 1 minute?
My name is Bob from the Police 911, and my concern with the project is, what are you going to do with all the inmates in there? You're going to shut the water off and do it, and then the inmates in there, they're not going to have any water for a while? What are you going to do with the inmates? Move them out? There's no, we don't have jail facilities to put them in.
Okay, thank you for your question.
So I can speak to that. No, these levels that we're doing the plumbing work is not on the jail side. The plumbing distribution is such that you can isolate specific sections of the building to isolate the domestic water, so there won't be water outages throughout the jail.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I need a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second it.
Please call the roll.
Udaly.
Thank you, and aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for the pertinent questions. Aye. And the ability to answer them too. Very good.
Thank you.
1164, I believe, right?
Yes. Accept recommendations of the Special Appropriations Committee for grant awards for the $650,000 fiscal year 2017-2018 Special Appropriations Fund.
Well, thank you for your patience. It's really kind of disappointing that a lot of people who probably would have been glad to have heard about this whole set of things that we are funding are no longer here. But I'm sure there are people at home who are watching television, and so speak to us and to them, please, to tell about this report.
We'll try our best to. For the record, my name is Craig Haynes, and I'm an analyst in the Office of Management and Finance, Grants Management Division. I'm here with Michelle Rodriguez from the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. I'll be talking about the $1 million Competitive Special Appropriations Fund. As I just mentioned, the total appropriation for this year was $1 million. $350 was allocated towards Portland United Against Hate. Michelle would address that, and I will address the remaining awards that were given under the $650,000 appropriation. I also want to add, this is the second year that the Grants Management Division is overseeing the special appropriations process. The committee for the $650,000 allocation, which comprised of a representative from each commissioner's office and one from the mayor's office, reviewed 166 applications, totaling more than $8 million in requests for the 4 different funding categories, which are community-based arts and culture, community health, expanding economic opportunities for Portlanders, and expanding opportunities for youth. Applications were evaluated and scored in the following 6 categories. Does the application address one or more of the city's measures of success? Does it impact an underrepresented community? Does it address the city's equity goals? Does it have a positive citywide impact? Does it have measurable outcomes? Is the project feasible? Each application was ultimately awarded an overall score out of total of 70 points by each committee member. Using these scores, the committee narrowed down the applications for discussion. There were several instances where the committee thought an organization should be awarded funding, but through a different source, such as the city budget process. As the committee assessed the scalability of the projects, additional information was requested from several applicants. Ultimately, the committee reached consensus on the proposed recommendations. So, of the 166 applications that we received, 17 were awarded funding. Applications were received from organizations that have never received funding from the city, as well as those with historic partnerships with the city. As this is the second year of awarding funds through this method, it was important to allow the committee flexibility as questions and issues arose. With that in mind, the committee suggests the following changes to improve the process and better outline expectations for future appropriations of this nature. Those recommendations are: an organization may only submit 1 application, cap the amount of funding that can be requested at $50,000. Only organizations providing services within the city would be eligible for funding. Organizations not currently receiving city funds will be given priority consideration, and begin the application process earlier in the year to better align with the budget adoption timeline and the start of the city's fiscal year. We hope this group of awardees accurately represent the goals and values of the city of Portland, and we encourage the council to continue with the process in upcoming fiscal years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are those recommendations been sent to the mayor?
Yes.
Oh, great, because I think I certainly support them.
Excellent.
And Mr. Rodriguez, you're going to add some more?
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, for the record, my name is Michelle Rodriguez with the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
The Portland United Against Hate project is a community-initiated coalition of community-based organizations, neighborhood associations, concerned communities in the city working with Office of Neighborhood Involvement, my bureau, ONI, to build a rapid response system that combines reporting and tracking of hateful acts and providing the support and protection our communities need in this uncertain era.
So I'm just going to interrupt you because this is not the item about Portland United Against Hate. This is about the other 650.
We just want to add one caveat. We thought since it's about special appropriations that we'd both come up at the same time. I'll give my spiel about the 650 portion, and then Michelle would just talk about the 350 portion. Okay. They're items 1164 and items 1166 respectively.
So if the clerk could please read 1166 as well. Is that all right?
Okay.
Or did you have openings?
I mean, I did have opening
Let's wait for them. Let's just, if you couldn't mind holding it.
Okay, no problem.
Our apologies.
It's all right. Yeah. We already did 1165. So that's the end of your report?
That's the end of my report for item 1164.
Any?
Yeah, I have some questions. So how measurable are outcomes for these awardees? I guess that's one of the things that concerns me about special appropriations. I think there's a rigorous process, but I am not as familiar with what kind of, it does talk about having measurable outcomes as being one of the criteria.
Yes, it
for
does.
making an award. So can you just maybe speak at a broad level?
I mean,
Are there
it
real
depends
measurable
on
outcomes?
it depends on the individual project. I mean, each project is different, not all 17 projects are the same. What we have asked grantees to do is every time you submit a request for reimbursement, then you submit a progress report as well, so we can see the progress you're making achieving the goals that you outlined in your application, and that's the measurable outcomes that we're talking about.
So each application does contain measurable outcomes?
Yes, it does.
The committee has discerned that they are, in fact, measurable outcomes?
Yes,
And then,
they have.
And then when you receive a request for payment?
Yes.
There's a project?
There's a progress
project
report that goes
progress
along
report.
with that, so we can see if they're taking steps towards the outcomes they outlined in their respective application.
Okay, and is there a feedback loop so that if you're not getting good progress reports from a grantee, that next time around, next year, that grantee may not be considered as favorably?
There's a feedback loop, but we're not waiting until next year to consider them to be non-favorable. We're providing feedback as we are receiving each request for reimbursement and each progress report. So
yeah, I guess, I mean, what I'm asking for is will the committee or will you, as the staff person overseeing this report, actually say to us, there's a grantee here that hasn't performed last year, hasn't achieved their measurable outcomes. Here they are this year asking for more money. And, you know, a lot of these are politically popular causes with those of us up here and elsewhere, and it's hard for us to say no to them. But if we're going to hold them to measurable outcomes, because this is $1 million of taxpayer money.
It is.
I expect you as staff people, and that includes you, Michelle, to be able to step forward and tell the city council a particular organization hasn't achieved.
Me and the Grants Management Division has no qualms in saying no to a particular grantee. I mean, we are trying as best as we can to have them adhere to the terms and conditions of the individual grant agreements. And one of those terms and conditions are those progress reports. If we in the Grants Division feel like they're not fulfilling their requirement, then we'll take steps to make sure that they are. And one of those steps might be withholding payment until they can prove to us that they are indeed taking steps towards those measurable outcomes that they mentioned in their respective applications.
Okay. And I guess another issue I just want to flag for all of us up here is one of your recommendations is limiting organizations to one application per cycle, per funding cycle.
Per funding cycle.
I would like to suggest that the council consider limiting it to one application per funding cycle every other year. Otherwise, these are going to become what we used to call the shadow appropriations or serial appropriations, where organizations come to us for one-time funding year after year after year after year until we finally break down and say, okay, let's put you into our regular funding cycle just so you'll go away. So I would like to suggest that we consider that, and I'll actually take responsibility for developing a recommendation along those lines to say that you can't apply every year, maybe every other year.
I mean, I agree with you, and I think one thing we are looking at is how sustainable is a project? I mean, are you coming back for funding every year, or are you trying to take steps to make sure that your program can continue without asking us for funding every year?
Commissioner Day, any comments?
I support the changes that you're recommending, and I'm also amenable to this idea that requests would be every other year. I mean, it's called special appropriations for a reason.
It is.
Organizations shouldn't see this as an ongoing funding stream.
I agree.
I guess I want to also acknowledge that while I have absolutely no financial stake, and neither do any of my immediate family members, I co-founded one of the organizations that is receiving a grant about 20 years ago and haven't served on their board for 16 years. So I just wanted to, it's called the Independent Publishing Resource Center.
Yes.
Yeah. And I have nothing to do with this decisions, but I just wanted to acknowledge that on the record.
Thanks for disclosing that.
Yeah.
Thank you, colleagues, for your comments. And I agree that there should be a limit on it. Just to refresh everybody's memory, it used to be that organisations with an inn in City Hall would find somebody, one of the council who was favourable to their organisation, and then that council person would try to get at least 2 other votes within the city budget. I believe this is a much fairer way that with an open application process, so that we don't then spend taxpayers' money on particular other things that may be important but aren't actually core mission. And I would actually look at adding a criterion how core to the mission of the City Council is, not that it has to be, but make the case. Also, I would like to see a report come back to us whenever the grants are done, so that, as Commissioner Saltzman was saying, have they done what they said they were going to do? What are the good outcomes that have happened? So I'd request maybe a community presentation at Council, because when great things are being done with relatively small amounts of money, it's always a good to know about them and to congratulate those who've achieved so much.
I agree.
Thank you. Then, does anybody want to testify on this issue? You could take a seat. We'll.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning, still.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X, independent publication. I'd like her to recuse herself from the vote. I don't think you have enough votes to do this today. I think it's an absolute conflict of interest. If she votes, I think there needs to be a complaint filed today. Moving on. I think it's great that the people are receiving grant money. I don't have anything against any of your organizations and the goals and the missions that you're trying to accomplish. So I want to make that very clear. One issue I do have is on being equitable. When you have 160 applications and $8 million they're requesting, of course, some people are going to be left out in organizations. Now, I did notice from 1164 back to 1166, you funded African Youth and Community Organization for $27,800 on the 1164, and then you went back to 1166 and you also funded the same organization. Now again, I'm not looking at the organizations through a lens. I think you're outstanding. I have no issues there. I'm looking at this strictly from an equitable, allowing other people to participate when you're talking 160 applications. So again, that is my only dispute. I don't have any other dispute in that direction. Again, on the $50,000 cap, I do agree with. In my opinion, I would like to see, and again, it's nothing against the groups, I always feel comfortable on having the auditors audit. I would like to see the auditors come in and audit these grants, and again, their progress. I feel comfortable have that independent style audits done. And again, these are special appropriations. Again, as Commissioner Saltzman stated, $1 million plus here. I'm just asking, and you can do an amendment on this, is to have the auditors audit this and have them just do a quick review and go over everything, look at the progress reports, and then do an analysis. And I wouldn't even mind if it just went to the commissioners. That would be fine. I don't need to see that. I'm just saying audit, look at it, provide the report to the commissioners. I don't even need it from the public. So again, absolutely agree on the direction the groups are going. Keep up the good work, and I'm glad to see you get this funding. Thank you.
And Mr. Lightning, the auditor has made it very clear that she's independent, so she doesn't take direction from the council about what to audit and what not to. So you could take that up with her directly.
Well, you could make an amendment, and I'm sure she'd be glad as the auditor to audit this.
We're not allowed to ask her to do that kind of things.
Thank you for your time.
Seeing no more testimony, this is a report, so I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Udaley?
So just to clarify, I have no financial interest in the Independent Publishing Resource Center, nor have I ever, so that is actually not a conflict of interest. And moving on, as we learned in the report, 2017 was the second year of using a formal grant process to allocate these special appropriation funds. And with that new structure, we were pleased to see more momentum and interest in the funds. We had over 160 applications, which is more than double last year. So I'm excited to see who applies as we move forward. There was a wide array of submissions, from Fresh Out, who focuses on direct services to the formerly incarcerated, to the Boys and Girls Club of Portland Metro, who advocates for our region's youth. And of course, we would have loved to fund every ask. Getting to the final award list was a challenging job for city staff to review, score, and discuss each application and narrow down the applicant pool to match our available special appropriation dollars. With that, I want to give thanks to those on the committee, from my team, Polly-Ann Burge, from the other commissioners' offices, and I also want to thank Craig Haynes, Sheila Craig, and Melissa Cochran from the Office of Management for overseeing the process. Of course, Michelle Rodriguez from ONI. It was a huge effort in a short period of time. I'm very pleased to be able to support such great work in our community. Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, I think the use of the Special Appropriations Committee, which we've done now for the past 2 years, is a vast improvement over the way we used to do business here in terms of awarding money sort of as a commissioner really has a pet project or a pet organization. So having a committee process and getting it out of our hands and all the pressures that we're subject to as elected officials is much better. And I really do want to just reiterate, though, that we need to be wary of turning this into a shadow appropriation process that we've labored hard and long to get away from. And that I do want to make sure that we are continuing to monitor the outcomes of the organizations and the progress. But good work both to Office of Neighborhood Involvement, Office of Management and Finance. I also want to recognize Tia Williams and of my office for her participation in this process as well. Aye.
Fritz?
I think we have consensus on the council. This is a good way to do things. So that's really showing that Mayor Hales' choice doing this 2 years ago is something that's going to endure. So thank you to both of my colleagues and the two that are not able to be here today. Thanks to Christina Nieves on my staff for being my representative. We're going to rotate it so we always have somebody fresh on the committee, and so that I can continue to say well back while the committee does their work. Since Commissioner Udaly declared her particular fondness for Independent Publishing Resource Centre from 20-some years ago, some of the we like all of these community organisations, but some of the ones that I've attended events for are the African Youth and Community Organisation, the Autism Society of Oregon, Bradley Angle, Dress for Success, POIC and Rosewood Initiatives and the Vanport Mosaic. And then some of these I have not even heard of at all. So I'm really excited to get that report next year to learn more about all of the good things going on in our community and where a little bit of funding by taxpayers can really bring a lot of benefits for our community. So I'm happy to support it. We do have a request for $350,000 in the fall bump to add back the money that is now going to the Portland United Against Hate. So I expect to hear from the committee their recommendations about whether they're going to reopen the process, choose from those who didn't get it, give more money to some that did get it. But of course, that all has to wait until we vote on the full budget monitoring process. So with this, I'm happy to vote aye. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for sitting there, because we already did 1165, and so now we're up for 1166.
Portland United Against Hate Special Appropriation Report.
Commissioner Udaly.
Thank you. As many of you know, Portland United Against Hate is a coalition of community-based organizations, neighborhood associations, and concerned Portlanders who came together last November to build a response to the increased fear felt in many marginalized communities. I'm proud of the PUA Coalition for their advocacy and leadership in helping the city develop a community-driven response to fighting hate. Addressing fear requires a proactive strategy, which means it's necessary for us to develop strong support systems before incidents even occur. I look forward to seeing how the grant awardees continue supporting and protecting community members while also creating a rapid response system. This initiative has the potential to become a model for how other municipalities address the spike in bias-related incidents, and I look forward to working with them and supporting them as we move forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Rodriguez from ONI.
Thank you. My apologies for coming up early. I was just so excited. The first thing that I was going to speak, for the record again, Michelle Rodriguez. My apologies, from the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. Commissioner Udaley summed up really what the background and mission was for Portland United Against Hate. In addition to these grant funding opportunities, the city has created a limited term full-time position within ONI to help coordinate and support these applicants. And also, as you asked Commissioner Saltzman, as it relates to outcome measurement, this person in this position, this hire that will come in, will absolutely be working both with technical assistance and sort of on an ongoing basis with a feedback loop that is ongoing around making sure that they reach outcomes. In our application, just to highlight some of the top parts of it, we actually asked for a brief calendar and outcome measurements to be laid out really in a matrix so that we could follow. Here's what you said you were going to do by November of 2017. Where are you at with this, et cetera? So we absolutely built that in already into the application. Just wanted to address those things before I forget. With these grants, the City of Portland desires to fund the efforts of organizations whose community they serve that have been impacted by hate. The city wants these funds to have broad impacts and to help move Portland to be a safer and more inclusive place for every member of the community. There were 2 grant funding opportunities, capacity building and data collection and analysis. The capacity building opportunity had 2 core components to it. Outreach, community organizing, point of contact, reporting, and response. This is to build staffing and volunteer capacity within the applicant organizations to effectively serve as trusted and accessible first points of contact for community members who have experienced a hate incident, provide shared resources and referrals to appropriate services and agencies, and to respond to such incidents with community-specific and culturally appropriate strategies. The training aspect was to provide training for organizational staff, volunteers, and community members to broaden awareness and understanding for how to resist and to be resilient for the long-term struggle, including skills like know your rights, understanding the history of hate, and having an analysis of how hate affects our communities, how to be an ally, disrupt prejudice and hate activity, and how to report a hate incident. The other funding was for the data collection and analysis portion to develop a data platform for gathering, tracking, sharing, and analyzing local hate activity, and a resource for community organizations to collect and enter incident information to this common tracking system built together as a coalition. The data analysis will then be used to refine the program to inform potential policy changes that would come before council, that would go to the police, et cetera, as well as support similar efforts in other cities statewide or nationally. The PUA Special Appropriations Committee is pleased to recommend the following organizations to receive funding from the $350,000 fiscal year 2017-2018 Special Appropriations Fund. ICO, APANO, African Youth Community Organization, known as ICO, Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon Communities United Fund, As the Spirit Moves Us, Coalition of Communities of Color, Fair Housing Council, Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, specifically Africa House with IRCO, Latino Network, Lewis and Clark Graduate School of Education and Counseling, Lutheran Community Services Northwest, OPAL, Environmental Justice Oregon, the Q Center, and Unite Oregon. The competitive grant funding opportunity received 65 applications totaling over $2.1 million in ask. Grant applications varied in size of ask from $1,000 up to the full amount allowable per application, which was $35,000. The breadth and scope of applicants revealed a serious need and a desire for community response to address the increasing rise in hate speech and crimes in our community. Each application reminded the committee of how deep this topic cuts so many vulnerable communities and how the need is far greater than the city could offer. The grant review committee was comprised of community members and city staff. The committee balanced many priorities in the review process, including geographic location, specific vulnerable communities served, as well as trying to fund as many groups as possible within the allotted $350,000 appropriation. Additionally, 35,000 was specifically set aside for that data and technology application, leaving a total of 315,000 for programs addressing being points of contact, training, and capacity building. The scoring rubric was available on the city website when the funding opportunity opened. The following categories were used to score each of the application: the narrative, purpose, needs, and who benefits. That included looking at the city equity goals and the city plan moving forward. Scope of work, their data and their measurements, partnerships and collaboration that they had, leveraging of dollars, and sustainability of efforts beyond this one-time funding, and their budget. Applications were scored at a total of 50 points. Using these scores, the committee narrowed down the applications for discussion. The committee had many difficult discussions and attempts to make sure there was a broad representation of community members impacted by the work and efforts to align with the city equity goals. Due to this, the committee chose to partially fund certain applicants and confirmed with them that they could scale their work down, and they have all said yes. Finally, the committee recommended setting aside $17,500 and open these dollars specifically to an organization that serves the Portland African American community, as this was one population sorely underrepresented in the final selection of the grant awards.
Thank you.
So the 17,000 is being reserved, or it's been reserved and granted?
The committee is recommending to set aside the 17,500 to go back and ask the community to resubmit applications to make sure that population is represented at the table. It would be very sad to not have that there.
Right, okay.
Other comments, Commissioner? So I'd like to make a comment, and that is that I went to the Northwest Public Employees Diversity Conference yesterday. Had a really fabulous presentation by Linda Castillo of the Office of Native Involvement and Shweta Morthy from Portland State University, telling everybody there about this initiative. And unlike the previous special appropriation, where I completely agree with you that we shouldn't be doing serial funding, I don't know if it's particularly these organizations, but it was very clear to me, and this is what they said, this is not going to go away in the next year, we don't think. And in fact, I vividly remember the Office of Neighborhood Involvement Budget Advisory Committee meeting that I was at very soon after November 8th. And, you know, we're supposed to be figuring out how to cut certain percentage. That got agreed upon relatively quickly, and then the whole discussion talked to how are we going to support vulnerable communities in this frightening time, which as time has gone by, I believe is even more frightening. So what Shweta and Linda said yesterday was these community organizations know what to do, they know how they're doing it. Sometimes their outcomes or deliverables aren't quite as measurable as the dominant culture, and yet they desperately need this funding, because some of them get lots of funding, and some from the city indeed, like Latino Network is one of our diverse civic leadership partners. These were all projects designed just mainly to focus on what additional things do we need to do above and beyond what we were doing what they were doing in the past to address this ever-present threat that just keeps getting worse and worse from my perspective. So. We're not here to make decisions about next year on this. I just wanted to report back from that convention that it seemed vital that we recognize this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and that we're going to have to help vulnerable communities stay safe, however they and their leaders define that. Some folks will want to have an online reporting, some will want to have prosecutions pushed, others don't want either of those things. Some people are happy documenting and then giving the summary information to the government, i.e. us, and others even don't want to do that. So this is somewhat uncharted territory in terms of deliverables, and we certainly don't want to make people less safe, as was with the DACA information that now the federal government knows who's been here and where they live, who were previously eligible for the DREAM Act. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I know it's very difficult to choose these particular organizations and how much they got. And thank you, Commissioner Udaley, for your leadership on it. Does anybody want to testify on this? Lightning wants to testify on this, please. We're getting a bit short Lightning, I know you always try to keep it as brief as necessary, so please keep doing that.
Thank you. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. My position again is I absolutely agree where all this grant money has gone to, and I wish you success on what you're trying to accomplish. I think it's a very important issue, and I know you'll do very well. Again, my position on publishers and different positions like that, such as Frank Falace of Exotica, who currently has a lawsuit and is labeled in articles as your friend, owns various strip clubs, lingerie shops. We talk about what people might consider hate. I'd like to report a hate crime as of today against Ellen Rosenblum. As we know, when this article hit with Mr. Jim Goad, some people got very upset that someone would even put this article in there, tying to Commissioner Udaley as a friend. And they went to WW, and I'll just read it.
Excuse me, Lightning, you really have to address the grants.
I am addressing grounds. This is hate, and I am notifying of a hate crime to Ellen Rosenblum.
This is not the forum to report
This is about hate and groups that monitor this and record this. This is about that. And let me just read the article if I can. It won't take long. We expected strong feelings. This is about hate. We were surprised to arrive at our office.
Lightning. You need to address the money.
October 23rd. To find a compost pile 6 feet high piled in front of Ellen Rosenblum's and her husband's office. That is hate. And for you to cut me off on a crime that was committed about Ellen Rosenblum is appalling when we're talking about hate.
I'm giving you a warning. Please stick to the item or you'll be asked to leave.
And again, let's move down to the list. Being a watchdog, again, respect the groups. I was trying to just figure out who As the Spirit Moves Us and what their grant project title is, Interrupting Hate in Public Spaces, Training Active Bystanders. I was trying to understand exactly what they do, if that is like at a rally, is that like going against certain people speaking certain things at rallies. I wanted to have a clear understanding. As you know, Commissioner Fritz, that's a concern to me. And as you know, coming up November 4th, it's a big concern to Police Chief Outlaw right now. Now, here's my position. I wanted to understand who this group is and what they're about. I tried to pull it up on Google, YouTube, everything else I could. Nothing came up. So maybe you can explain to me, since you're funding this group, when I sit back down before you kick me out for defending Ellen Rosenblum, which I absolutely will defend her at any and all costs against someone like you.
Thank you, Mr. Lightning.
Thank you very much. It's good to know who your friends are in this city, isn't it, Commissioner Udaley?
Please call the roll. We need a motion to accept and second.
Thank you for your time.
Move to accept the report.
From even handing the money out.
Second it.
Please call the roll.
Udaley?
So I'd like to thank my colleagues, especially Council President Fritz, for her work on Portlanders United Against Hate, and for recognizing that the city needs to play an active role in protecting marginalized Portlanders from bias incidents. These projects would not have been possible without the funding we're providing. As Michelle has pointed out, this granting process has revealed that there is much greater need and interest than we are able to accommodate. So I want to thank every organization who applied for a grant.
You do all the time to the protesters. I'm walking out. Who wants to hear your voice? You shouldn't be funding these reputable groups. They're good people. You're tainting the whole process.
Thank you for continuing.
Again, no conflict of interest with any of the special appropriations recipients, and in particular, not with the ones receiving the PUA funds. I want to thank Michelle Rodriguez for her presentation today and for all her work throughout the granting process. I'd also like to thank Linda Castillo from ONI, as well as Winta Johannes from my office for their work with PUA. Evaluating over 60 applications is no easy task, so I'd like to also sincerely thank the community members who participated on the grant panel selection. Finally, I want to thank all of the community organizations who will be bringing their creativity and expertise to these exciting projects. I'm happy to vote aye.
Saltzman.
Well, I want to thank Commissioner Udaly for heading up this process. I want to thank Ms. Rodriguez and also Mr. Haynes for their work on the special appropriations reports, and I'm pleased to vote aye.
Fritz.
Well, thanks, Commissioner Udaly, and thanks, Michelle Rodriguez. Thanks to Goldan Salazar in my office, who is the liaison to Portland United Against Hate. And I can say without hesitation that I love every one of these organizations that received funding. There's probably many others that are not on the list that didn't quite get in this time. As I said, I do believe we're going to have to continue and maybe even increase it as time goes by. So Portlanders who are frightened of what's happening, I think I certainly share some of that fear, and I want you to know that your City Council will do all we can to look after you. Aye. Now, just one more item on the regular agenda, and then we have two pulled from consent. Thank you very much. So 1169, please.
Assess property for sidewalk repair for the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
Thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you can do this in short order.
Very quickly. Good afternoon. I'm Sherry Matias from the Auditor's Office.
Speak right into the microphone if you would. Thank you.
I'm Sherry Matias from the Auditor's Office.
I'm Mike Zeller. I'm an inspector with sidewalks at Maintenance Operations.
Lee Munson, Peapod Sidewalks.
This ordinance is for sidewalk repair on property that is required by the city. Any remonstrances have been pulled from this assessment and are not in this ordinance.
That was very short and sweet. Thank you. Anything to add, gentlemen? Okay. Thank you for being here and again for your patience. Would anybody like to testify on this?
I think Star left.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is a report. I need a no, it's not. It's a
First reading.
It's a first reading. Thank you. It takes teamwork at this point. So this moves to second reading. What I propose we're going to do is just hold hearings on the two items pulled from consent, and then we'll have to set over the voting until next week because they're both emergencies. Okay. So please read 1158.
Revise First Amendment to the Intergovernmental Agreement for Cost Sharing of Levy-Ready Columbia Expenses Not Covered by IFA Loans to extend program, provide additional funding, broaden allowable expenses, and amend parties to agreement.
And who pulled this, please?
Mr. Lightning did.
And he's left. So unless you have anything to add, Mr. Rust? No? All right. So this will move to second reading next week. Unless, does anybody here want to testify on it?
Yeah, right.
Nope. Thank you very much. Thank you for sitting through it. I hope you had other things to do. And then finally, 1160.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation to jointly conduct in-water sampling in the Willamette River downtown reach.
Thank you. And who pulled this one?
Mr. Lightning did also.
Does anybody want to testify on this? Any conversation? Seeing none, passes to second reading next week. Or passes on to next week, both of those things as emergencies still, and we'll have those present next week review the file so that they can vote. Thank you. With that, we don't have any meetings this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon, so we've got 10 minutes left before the expected end of the agenda today. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your stickability, and thank you to you as well for helping me figure out all the numbers. We are adjourned.